Okay, so before we get into talking about storytelling, I really want you to understand why storytelling is so important and why it matters for the YouTube algorithm. So to understand that, you actually have to understand the algorithm itself. And actually, the algorithm for YouTube is very, very simple. It does take in quite a lot of different factors, but there's really only two things. And by the way, I'm not making this up. YouTube has physically said this on their blogs and stuff. They take click-through rate, which is what's the likelihood of someone being able to click on your video. And so that is determined by things like thumbnails and titles, but also whether someone's enjoyed your video before. So there's a psychological component to it as well. But when we talk about what we're trying to optimize with YouTube storytelling, fundamentally you're optimizing for two things. You're optimizing for watch time, which is measured in the average view duration of a video called AVD, or in the average view percentage of a video, which is how much percent the average person watches. So for example, if you get average view percentage of like 60%, that's actually really, really good. If you get it 70%, that's like amazing. But typically more so you might get 50%. And actually that number actually does change depending on the time of the video. So for example, it's easier to keep someone on for a 1 minute video and have a high average view percentage, but really when you compare it to other 1 minute videos, then that's actually what you're competing against. And if you've got a 15-minute video, your video is being compared to other 15-minute videos. Fundamentally, there's this idea of watch time and what's called retention. Being able to retain a viewer throughout your video is the thing that's going to actually push your video into the recommended part of YouTube. In other words, when YouTube recognizes that people, one, click on your video quite often, but also two, they watch the video for long periods of time, then YouTube will actually take those videos and start to recommend them more and more and more. So YouTube storytelling is the art of being able to take someone as far as you can throughout that video. Now here, I'm just purely talking about algorithm. I'm sure you might have some individual preferences for, how you want to be as a YouTuber and, what sort of mark you want to make on the world and that sort of thing. And that's of course very important for your long-term success. But really, when it comes purely to the nuts and bolts of how the algorithm works, algorithm does work on watch time. So when I talk about YouTube storytelling, what you're actually optimizing for is how do I take this viewer who's now decided to actually watch my video, how do I keep them engaged enough to take them as far as I can? What is it about human attention that's particularly engaging? You're really trying to figure out what is it that I need to do in my videos to keep someone's attention for long periods of time. And that's fundamentally what this course is about. So we're going to be operating on the basis of trying to keep someone's attention for as long as possible. And it turns out that there's a lot of depth to that particular question, which is why this course I hope is helpful, because it's not something that you can just figure out unless you do quite a lot of observation of YouTube videos or talk to a lot of people about it. This course is fundamentally a shortcut because I've just analyzed hundreds of videos trying to think about my own YouTube channel, and I hope this will help you too. And I guarantee that if you take some of these principles, then your YouTube videos are going to be better, and better videos means that you're going to have a channel that actually grows. So in the next video, I want to talk about some storytelling styles, because the first question is, if there are so many different types of videos on YouTube, why do some succeed and some fail, yet there are many different styles of doing so? And so I think that's a really interesting question. Let's go to it next. If you're serious about trying to make good videos on YouTube, I think that this course will be very, very useful for you. The way that the YouTube algorithm works is that the longer people stay on your videos, the more your videos get recommended to people. And the best and perhaps only way to do that is by good YouTube storytelling. YouTube storytelling is very unique in that storytelling is actually optimized for retention, because the way that you actually get views on your channel is, one, to be consistent, but two, to have very, very good videos. We're going to deeply analyze videos from a lot of creators with multi-million subscribers as well as multi-million views. And I want to break down what it is exactly inside those videos that makes them so engaging, that makes them so good, and keeps people coming back, and also is algorithm friendly. This is the course that I honestly wish I had when I was starting YouTube, because I think that it would have accelerated things a lot faster in terms of my channel, and I actually think that I would have done things a lot differently. Rather than you having to try to figure it all out for yourself, I'm going to present you everything I know about YouTube storytelling. If you diligently apply the principles from this course, then your retention is going to go up for your videos, and it's going to be extremely valuable for your channel and your channel growth. This is not just from experience on my own channel, but I've actually helped YouTuber friends also increase their retention and seeing the results of the advice that I'm about to give you. So really, I'm sharing a lot of kind of secrecy, because basically it's a license to make YouTube videos that give views. I care about evidence and case studies, because I'm not just trying to pull things out of thin air. So I'm going to try to include as many case studies as I can to try to illustrate concepts so you can see that this is how it works in practice. These are how these YouTubers get millions of views and millions of subscribers. This course is really in depth. It's for someone that's not just starting to learn about storytelling on YouTube, which will help you too. But I'm sure that even if you've done YouTube for a while, even if you had 10,000 or, one of my friends who has 100,000 subscribers, he said that the stuff that I've taught him has been very helpful in improving his channel too. If you really care about growing your YouTube channel, then this course is going to be extremely helpful. It will save you months, if not years, of trying to figure all the stuff that I've thought about for the past 1.5 years myself. These are really the tools of the trade and the tricks of the trade that people with millions of subscribers use to get millions of views on their YouTube channels. Because fortunately, you can just observe for yourself, but I've just done that observation for you. I want to share with you what I know. And if you genuinely watch all the videos and you still hate it and you got nothing out of it, then of course I'll refund you. But I can pretty much guarantee that that's not going to be the case, because there's a lot of not only case studies here, but my own original thoughts and analyses on these videos. So I'm sure you'll find it useful no matter what sort of channel you're making. I'll see you in the course. So this video is going to be about storytelling styles. Now, storytelling on YouTube is built for retention, which means that you're trying to essentially engage people for as long as you can. However, it turns out that people are different. What works for some groups of people does not work for other groups of people. If you're trying to do something educational, for example, if you actually go at the pace of, for example, a Mr. Beast or very, very fast video, then what can happen is that people can feel overwhelmed. Keeping in mind who your audience is actually determines the pace of what you're trying to make. For stuff that tends to go viral, or I guess what you might call Mr. Beast videography. So Mr. Beast, if you don't know him, is a YouTuber with now 92.5 million subscribers as of 30th of March 2022. He almost, I guess, pioneered this concept of very, very fast video editing, of retention videography is the name I'm going to make up for it. And what happens in this sort of videography is that you're getting fed information so fast that people don't feel like they actually have a chance to click off, because something is always about to happen. And when you have something that's always about to happen, or something interesting that's happening on screen, and you're fed that at a very sort of fast rate, it's very, very difficult to click off from those kinds of videos. So I just want to show you him on the most, I guess, aggressive side of the scale to start off with.
We are currently surrounded by countless sharks.
Maybe even 1,000.
I don't think it's that many. And in this backpack is 100 grand. And if you retrieve that $100,000 in cash, I'll give it to your #1 fan.
Oh.
Who is conveniently right here.
Oh.
Let's go, Chris! Okay. Let's go, baby! There's literally sharks. Look, tree. Oh my gosh. Jimmy!
It's so far down, what the heck?
The sooner you get the money, the sooner you're out. Oh, really?
You got it.
Let's go! You gotta make it back. Get back to the boat. Let's go! Here's your $100,000 in cash. If I was you, I'd kiss Chris. This is my...
So that entire sequence, the title of the video, Would You Swim with Sharks for $100,000? That's all over in 50 seconds. I'm going to talk about the individual components of that entire thing in the next video, but I just wanted to illustrate that by having something so fast, people feel like they've been rewarded very quickly. And that's actually a very, very good thing for retention, because ultimately, when we talk about attention is actually the psychology of reward. I'm going to show you some more videos to also illustrate this type of fast pacing. This is not actually even on the main Mr. Beast channel. This is on a Beast Reacts channel, but you can see the same sort of premise applies where you've got immediate hook-event-payoff. We'll talk about that a bit more in a second, but
we're gonna be reacting to the cutest animals on the planet.
Like this one.
Or this bird riding a bicycle. This video is insanely cute.
Oh, look at that little puppy.
Oh my gosh.
okay, so premise of the video is set up in 10 seconds.
There's so many.
The thing is though, all those golden retrievers are gonna grow up to be gigantic. Oh my gosh. That's like heaven.
That's so adorable.
I would cry. Oh, look at the mama and daddies.
The big golden retrievers are like, oh.
Little kids just fall over so much. They're so bad at walking.
Okay, so that's the first world cutest animal little clip done in 30 seconds. Now, because Mr. Beast has influenced quite a lot of YouTubers, you actually see this style of YouTubing across the entire platform now. And as an example, Matthew Beam, if you've never seen him before, is a YouTuber that actually grew very, very, very quickly because of his viral video ideas and also this emphasis on retention videography.
In this video, I'm gonna be building the Batmobile, but only using cardboard. I've always wanted to know what it feels like to race the streets, fight crime, and then disappear into the night like Batman. Unfortunately, building a metal Batmobile would cost millions of dollars. So today, we're doing the second best thing by using cardboard and surprising everyone at my local town's premiere of the new movie Batman. But first, we need a game plan.
What sort of game plan?
We're screwed. Before we can start building, we need a lot of cardboard.
Again, very, very fast pacing. And pacing is not just the number of cuts, although that is a component of it, but it's actually how quickly do things happen from scene to scene. So far we've talked about spectacles, but actually if we even go, for example, to the tech world, someone that does this sort of very fast-paced videography very well is Mr. Who's the Boss, who's now got 10 million subscribers. He really takes a lot of the concepts from Mr. Beast in this style of videography, but applies it to tech.
I'm about to spend $10,000 in the next 200 seconds ordering the most impossibly thin tech on the entire planet. Okay, I mean, how thin do cameras get?
And so when you sort of understand the hook, you get a sort of feel, and after you watch video after video after video, you understand that this is the pace of these videos, right? So if you're trying for this style of video, it's worthwhile looking at these videos and trying to emulate the pace, comparing your video to these videos as well. You want to see that your video is also kicking off with a strong pace. Now, I've talked a lot about retention videography, but there are ways to keep people's retention without necessarily going at 1,000,000 miles per hour. And I think that this is very, very interesting for audiences which are aimed perhaps more so at people that are a bit older or people that don't necessarily want to be thrown heaps and heaps of information, you know? So Veritasium is a fantastic storyteller on YouTube. He's got 11.6 million subscribers, and just have a look at how he structures his story.
This video is about the ridiculous way we used to calculate pi. For 2,000 years, the most successful method was painstakingly slow and tedious. But then Isaac Newton came along and changed the game. You could say he speed ran pi, and I'm going to show you how he did it. But first, pie with pizzas. Cut the crust off a pizza and lay it across identical pizzas. And you'll find that it goes across 3 and a bit pizzas. This is pi. The circumference of a circle is roughly 3.14 times its diameter. But pi is also related to a circle's area. Area is just pi r squared. But why is it pi r squared? Well, cut a pizza into really thin slices and then form these slices into a rectangle. Now, the area of this rectangle is just length times width. The length of the rectangle is half the circumference because there's half the crust on one side and half on the other. So the length is pi r.
So this style of video, a lot calmer, but actually you can start to see that between viral videos and between videos that grab attention, even if the pacing is a little bit different, the actual videos have one particular quality which is exactly the same. The quality of narrative progression. There's always something happening that connects one part of the video to the other, always something happening that actually helps to drive the feeling of progress in a video. I'd like to think of people's attention almost being something like a cost, as something that when people watch a video longer and longer and longer, the cost increases. So for example, if you just watch 1 minute of a video, maybe that's $1 of time. By the time that you get to 20 minutes of a video, going from 20 to 21 minutes, that is kind of a costly thing. Like you need to do more to be able to keep people's attention for that period of time. When sort of they're progressively getting more bored, they're looking at things on their phone, there's got other distractions in their life, maybe it's the kids, maybe it's another phone notification. So your video is not just competing against other videos on YouTube, it's actually competing against every distraction that someone might have in their life that might take their attention. So Veritasium is a really good way to look at sort of the pacing of a more explanatory type video. Sometimes you might want to go for a cinematic type video, which even has a different pacing itself. For example, James Jarney is now at 1 million subscribers, but he actually posts very few videos and instead opts for insane amounts of quality on his videos instead.
By no means am I calling the individuals mentioned in this video scammers. Consider what you are about to see a criticism of their business practices and promoted ideologies, not an incitement of harassment or hate. I have no way of knowing their true intentions. It is entirely possible that those mentioned have created their teachings with good intent, no matter how misguided those teachings have become. And whilst I will be including sources to back up every claim that I make, treat this video as my own opinion and conclusions surrounding the subject of New Age spirituality and New Thought-related ideas. Now, to those who think I am criticizing anyone who is trying to make money, you have misunderstood my position. One look at my channel will show you I have no problem with somebody making money. However, I do take issue with the context surrounding how they make their money.
A lot of people actually were in my group where attending the event.
You can see that this video starts off really slow compared to, for example, in this video we're going to be swimming with sharks, you know, and that's because it's built for a different audience. This is built for an audience that's ready to strap in for a half-hour video, almost as if they were watching a Netflix documentary. If you were to take Netflix videos and put them onto YouTube, actually the starting retention for a lot of the Netflix videos would actually be pretty low, to be honest. All I'm trying to say with this video is different pacings can work, and you just have to carry them in different ways. If you're making a video that is a spectacle, so for example, it's like if it's something to do with humor, or if it's something just generally aimed at a younger audience, fast content is probably going to be the way you're going to go. If you're going for something that's more so at a more mature audience, or an audience that loves to take in information, then actually pacing it on the slower side actually might help you make it more digestible for them instead of ultra confusing for them. Just have a think about your storytelling style, and the way to know if you're doing the right thing, I think it's a really, really good exercise. If you've got YouTubers that are like you and you're trying to make content like them, then understanding how they pace things is going to be probably the way that you can get closest to pacing things correctly. And you wouldn't want to look necessarily at huge YouTubers, because sometimes that can actually be a bit misleading. You want to look at people with maybe 100,000 subscribers, maybe 500,000 subscribers, who still get videos that have a lot of views. So for example, if a 100,000 subscriber YouTuber has a video with 100,000 views, then that is actually going to be very valuable. If they have something with 500,000 views, then I'd be really looking closely at those sorts of videos. Whereas if someone who has like 1 million subscribers has a video with 50,000 views, probably I don't look at that video to say, oh, okay, I shouldn't do what's in this particular video, or I should learn from this particular video and just try to understand why it doesn't quite work with this particular audience. So pacing is going to be a really important parameter for helping determine that. Anyway, I've talked enough about storytelling styles, so I want to talk about one fundamental structure of YouTube storytelling, and that's the Mr. Beast style, because I feel like if you can understand this concept, then no matter what sort of channel you have, you can understand something that can be very valuable to people. Let's go to understand the fundamental structure of storytelling. With regards to YouTube storytelling in particular, this is going to be the most useful structure for you to remember. If you understand this particular structure, you not only understand how to grab people's attention, but you also understand what it is that makes a video rewarding. So this is really, really valuable. We're going to use Mr. Beast's video as an example, and I'm going to try to illustrate it. So fundamentally, the structure is Hook-Event-Payoff. Let me explain all of those three things in a moment.
I built the world's most dangerous escape room, and if this contestant can finish it in less than 1 hour, he wins $100,000.
Level 1 is simple. They must escape this room before these spikes impale them. I'm gonna head out.
Wait, these are actually sharp.
Too bad. The walls are closing in. Oh God, they're sand! You gotta break out of the room. Break the brick wall. Get the wall. Tools. Get the wall. This is literally only level 1, and they're struggling. Jesus, hurry! Go! Oh my God! Are you kidding me?
And that was just the first of 10 different levels.
Okay, that entire little micro plot took about 40 seconds, and we're gonna break it down now that you've watched the whole thing, so I can help you understand what it is that makes something like this work. So, to start off with, you've got the hook. Now, the hook is the most important part of a video, because if people don't get past the hook and they're not interested in the video, then they'll click off. So getting this right takes a lot of thinking and a lot of practice, but eventually, as you keep making more and more videos, this is something you'll get very good at. Now, I'm just gonna play the hook to start off with.
I built the world's most dangerous escape room, and if this contestant can finish it in less than 1 hour, he wins $100,000.
So this is the hook. The hook has to do one major thing, which is to reaffirm the click. In other words, when people click on a video, they will come in with an expectation of some kind of reward. You've been through this before. You've gone and clicked on a video and then it doesn't really talk about the stuff that you're wanting to click on, and you actually feel very unhappy with that kind of video, right? It might be like a software tutorial where you're just like, oh man, like I just want this person to get to the point. I just want to find this one particular thing from this one particular video. Well, that's actually how most people think, even if they're just browsing a particular video. So by reaffirming the click, it's absolutely the most important thing that you can do for a video, because it means that you can be like, aha, this person has clicked on my video and now I'm going to give them what they came for, and they'll feel at least that they're going to stick around for the next thing to sort of see what's going on. Second, the hook has to be something that is actually interesting, right? So for example, if this video was just like, well, the winner gets $1, probably not that interesting. If it gets $10, gets $100, a bit more interesting. And if the person gets $100,000 if they complete this escape room, suddenly, wow, that's actually pretty interesting, right? Obviously, if you're not Mr. Beast, which most people aren't, then you may not be giving away huge amounts of cash. But the idea is kind of the same. If you have a mediocre reward at the end of the video, then people aren't going to stick around for the start of the video even, because they'll be like, well, even if I watch this whole video, I'm probably not going to find anything much interesting by the end of it, right? Trying to use something that is grand and theatrical, those sort of things people become interested in, or even if not necessarily grand, but something that they themselves can feel that they're going to get a reward from it. Let's say for an educational video, because that's actually very different, right? You might be like, well, by the end of this video, I'm going to show you how to make this particular 3D model. And so people will stick around for that because they'll be like, oh, okay, like if I watch this entire video, then I'll know how to make a blender donut or something in the end. So whether you're in entertainment or education, the whole idea is the same. You want people to understand that the video they're going to watch is going to be worth watching, and that if they do watch it, that they're going to get the reward that you say you're going to give them in the end. Because if people don't think that a video is going to help them in a certain way or entertain them in a certain way, they're just going to click off and just go to the next video, which will actually do that thing for them. Now, I just want to play this hook again because I want to iterate something really, really important with the hook.
I built the world's most dangerous escape room, and if this contestant can finish it in less than 1 hour, he wins $100,000.
I built the world's most dangerous escape room, and if this contestant can finish it within 1 hour, then he will win $100,000. Something that is absolutely critical of the hook is that it has to be clear. It's very, very easy to get into convoluted hooks and sort of, talk about the nuances of something or talk about yourself. You can easily lose a YouTube viewer based on the fact that the YouTube viewer just does not understand what is going on with your video. You want to try to use language that's relatively simple. You want to illustrate it visually in a way that's also understandable. If you can do that, then people will be, much happier, because as soon as someone doesn't understand a video, that's another point where they will drop off a video. You don't want that to be in the hook, which is the very start of your video, right? Another thing that I often see is that YouTubers will often introduce themselves. I personally don't think that introductions are a good thing to do, and I made this mistake before for sure. But I feel like the problem with a self-introduction is that, unfortunately, no matter how cool you think you are or whatever, people are not always going to be interested in you at the start, especially when you're just a brand new YouTuber, a brand new face that they've never seen before. If your start is something like, welcome to Tech Talks, where we talk about everything technology, and make sure to subscribe for the latest in technological news, basically you're probably going to see a 50% drop in that particular moment, right? Because no one cares. They will care about the iPad that you're talking about, or the new phone that you're talking about, but they won't care that you're a particular channel trying to do something or whatever. I personally know that if I make a rambly video talking about myself, it has the worst retention by any video, and it's fine. Like, I realize that those videos aren't actually built for retention. They're built for community, which is a different thing, right? But if you're talking about building a video that's going to get people to not drop off, I would try to avoid those videos where possible. Maybe if you had a vlog, maybe that could be interesting, but even then, I still feel like the thumbnail and the title of the video, that's the thing that the people came for, not necessarily you as a person, unless they've already seen you before, sort of thing. So that's some of the really important parts of the hook in a nutshell.
Level 1 is simple. They must escape this room before these spikes impale them. I'm gonna head out.
Wait, these are actually sharp.
Too bad. The walls are closing in.
Oh God, they're sand!
You gotta break out of the room. Break the brick wall.
Get the wall! Tools! Get the wall!
This is literally only level 1, and they're struggling.
Jesus, hurry! No! Oh my God! Are you kidding me?
So this is the next part of a micro plot of a video, and that's this concept of event. Now, event is literally just the thing happening, right? Trying to make that interesting is kind of an interesting challenge in itself. You want to make sure that your event is progressing, and generally speaking, progression can be interesting if there's conflict introduced. Conflict can take place in certain ways. So for example, if someone is fighting someone else, that's a conflict. If someone is fighting against something, that's a conflict. If someone is fighting with something internally and philosophically, then that's a conflict. So generally speaking, humans love conflict. The other way you can do it is that if your viewer, let's say, for example, one of Ali Abdal's really big videos was talking about how he became first at Cambridge University or something, and then he talked about his essay memorization framework. There, the event itself is actually a description of how he did it, because he's taking a student from A to B, where A is the student as they are now, and B is a better student that has improved grades. So the event has to have enough context for clarity, because again, as soon as you lose clarity, then you lose your audience. The event itself is also a great place to introduce the characters that are in your plot. If you're just doing a solo thing, might be yourself or why something matters to you. If you've got other people working with you, then the characters are the people inside the video. When it comes to YouTube specifically, you may not necessarily want to dwell on the characters too long to start off with, and that's a bit different from how you might develop a character in a traditional narrative, for example, where the character is actually the thing that matters the most. The key thing is that you want to get people started on a journey, and then you can maybe explore that character in depth a little bit later. But that's just a personal opinion. Obviously, you can feel free to play with that as you like.
This is literally only level 1, and they're struggling.
So here, the conflict is obviously that they're going to be impaled / die, and that actually leads me to the topic of stakes. Now, stakes is really important. I don't mean the chewy meaty kind, but rather the stakes of someone being in their journey. You know, what is at risk for them? What do they stand to lose? Us as people that like stories, we love this concept of unresolved questions. It has to feel like there's some tension within the story. It has to almost have this sense of, you know, something bad could happen to this person if they just don't put any effort into the thing that they're, you know, trying to do. And so as people watching, we love this idea that someone is going to be trying hard at something, or someone is trying to make an effort towards doing something. And so when someone has something that they stand to lose, that is interesting. Otherwise, you don't have much tension. Otherwise, a plot is kind of like a slice of life kind of thing. And you don't want to generally have that, because when there's absolutely nothing at risk, then it's like, well, the person who's watching won't be interested as well. You know, you can go really deeply into that and try to understand the reason why people watch stories in general and why people cling on to stories or want to be engaged with stories, is because stories actually help normal people survive in the world. This is in real life. So by understanding stories and understanding how a character goes through a particular situation, it means that if this person who is watching came for some reason to the same situation, then they would be then able to solve it, you know? There's actually a big human survival reason for that. So for example, if someone was telling you their story about how they, as a caveman or whatever, survived a tiger, and you learned from that, then you too would be able to understand how to survive a tiger potentially. That sort of thing is very inbuilt into people. It's one thing to just learn about how to make money. It's another thing to learn about how someone came from rags to riches and how they made money. The latter is much more interesting, and actually the information might be exactly the same. It's just that the latter is wrapped in a story which is much more digestible for us. To summarize, if you don't have stakes, you don't have tension. Stakes, really important. I think it's important to illustrate that the music plays a big component here, of course, as well, because, you know, if you put in sort of light piano music, the tension in the scene is going to be very different, right? So we've talked about hooks and events and how you set up conflict and stakes, but what I want to talk about now is about the payoff, the thing that actually makes a video rewarding.
Jesus, hurry! Go! Oh my God!
Now, that doesn't have a very traditional payoff. The way that Mr. Beast perhaps used to do more videos was that at the end of a particular video, you know, he would physically give a financial reward. So for example,
This student, $100,000 to drop out. We worked with her mom and her teacher, and she has no idea we're about to interrupt her summer school lessons with $100,000 in cash.
Oh, let's see if she answers the trick question correct.
Hey, do you mind if we interrupt? Have you ever heard of the channel Mr. Beast? Okay, this will make this so much easier. Boys, bring in the $100,000.
Hello.
Would you drop out of high school for $100,000 in cash? Why not?
I can still make money, go to college, and get a career.
I agree, which is why this is actually a trick question. And if you said yes, I would have given you money, but since you said no, you just won $100,000. Here's $20,000.
$40,000, it's so heavy. Don't let it fall.
Yeah. Oh, don't cry. No problem. We're just all crying.
So this is the more traditional Mr. Beast style video where he would give some sort of reward, some sort of big payoff to someone, right? And the payoff is the thing that, makes people feel a sense of reward for watching the video. The payoff has to be something that's real. You can't just make up a payoff. Sometimes it can be people's reactions, as you can see, and you have to capture their genuine reactions, because authenticity is a big part, obviously, of whether a payoff is going to be effective or not. I guess the other thing about the payoff, it does have to be something that if you just gave them some chocolate, I mean, that's not a huge payoff at all, because you might just be mildly satisfied, right? So you're not going to feel it as much, obviously. Now, you don't necessarily have to be giving money away for the payoff. The whole point is that you're actually trying to give the viewer a sense of reward and satisfaction and that sort of thing. You want people to feel good when they're watching your video. Think of your channel as something which is going to be rewarding people again and again and again, so that when you actually think about macro click-through rate, then people come back to your videos not just because they're interested in the one specific video that you're creating, but because they know that you yourself are making videos that they like, that they're rewarded by when they watch it, and that's how you keep people in the long term. Anyway, this is the general structure: hook, event, payoff. And if you can understand that that's the microstructure, you'll be very well placed to help understand how your videos can improve. And it doesn't necessarily have to be these kinds of competitions. You can still use it for any style of video that you're going for. You might just have to be a bit creative in how you adapt it. In the next video, I want to talk a little bit about macro structure, because I've talked a lot about the micro, but macro motifs are really kind of important for keeping long-term retention as well. So let's talk about that next. So we've talked about microstructures, but in this video, I want to talk about macro structures and basically a motif behind the video. Now, for a video to hook someone in for a long time, it has to have a continuous sense of progression. As soon as someone feels like a video stops progressing in some sort of way or form, then people are just basically going to stop looking at it. It's almost like someone has gone and mined for diamonds, right? But if they feel that they've gotten every single diamond that they could mine, then they're going to leave the diamond mine, obviously. The same thing is true for videos. When you have a macro motif for a video, in other words, a motif that goes throughout the entire video, that's something that keeps people to the end. The hook, event, payoff structure is useful in micro chunks, but you can't have the same hook, event, payoff just for one video, because if you do that, what happens is that it drags out so long that people actually become sort of disinterested in it, right? In an ideal situation for retention, your video is made up of all these hook, event, payoffs stacked one after the other. And something that you can have for like a macro structure, one of the most commonly used ones is where you have almost like a list, counting down from the top 25, where number 25 on the list is maybe $1, and then you're gradually getting more expensive to number 1 on the list, which is like $100,000 for a tech product, as an example. Let me show you one example right now. This YouTube video did very well for this particular guy, Dom. He has 879,000 subscribers, as you can see from the video, but 2.4 million views. So he's almost got 3 times the amount of views as subscribers. And you can see even in the title, it's level 1 to level 100 of Minecraft Impossible Plays. So if you look through this,
these are 100 levels of extreme and impossible Minecraft trick shots, some of which have been completed by less than 5 people. But I don't believe that they are impossible, and therefore I'll be attempting them all, starting with level 1. Let's go! There's a very good chance this level will confuse you. Nailed it. Now I've got to jot that onto this.
You can see this continuous sense of progression. You can feel this continuous sense of progression. You know that there's 100 levels in this particular video, and it's starting off at level 1, going to level 5, going to level 10. So you yourself feel like the video is progressing and you're gaining more and more from it, right? That's a very basic example. Let me grab another example, perhaps from Mr. Who's the Boss.
This is really satisfying. I'm going to tip the whole thing in. Wow! Yes! I've just bought 22 of the most ridiculous cheap gadgets on the planet. We're talking guns that you can use to eat your dinner with, shower heads that will literally change the very way that you clean yourself, and even the cheapest Apple product that you had no idea existed. So we're going to start at $30 and just keep getting cheaper. Even the video is going to get cheaper as we go. We started already. So, kicking things off at bang on $30, this...
So you can see, this is how Mr. Who's the Boss does the exact same thing. And this is a really, really good retention tactic where you have to have this escalation of tension in storytelling, or you have to have this escalation in the sort of extremeness or whatever the hook is in the storytelling, right? It means that your viewer doesn't get bored, because the one thing you want to avoid in a video is sameness. Because if you have sameness, then people get bored. If you have sameness, then people feel like there's a lack of progression. The way that you counter this is to have a well-defined sense of progression. And you can see that this macro progression is also illustrated visually. So for example, in Mr. Who's the Boss video, he's physically got the 22 as the number there. He's also actually had this sort of sidebar listing 1 to 22. So that's going to fill up gradually during the video. As long as you keep building things up, then that will help a lot. If you have something which is time-based, like for example, Ryan Trahan, the way that he displays it is something like this.
This is 3D, this is 2D, and this is 1D. I wish this video was about them. Pretty much every video game I played growing up was two-dimensional, meaning the characters could only exist on the planes of width and height, I guess. And nowadays, there's games that feel three-dimensional, right? But since we play them through a screen, they still lack that third dimension of true depth. I'm gonna be spending the next 50 hours in this 2D headset, which means I'm not even close to the door, am I? We're starting at a coffee shop. You guys sell coffee?
Here he's got this illustration of 50 hours of something, right? Therefore, he'll have hour 1, hour 2, and you'll just feel this sort of time progression as well. So that's another way you can do it. It's really important if you are doing something like this to have something visually that comes up for it as well. So for example, you might have a timer. You might have Mr. Who's the Boss method of trying to, you know, label it from 1 to 2 to 10 or whatever. That's basically how macro structure works. And then once you get to the end of the video, once you've actually reached the very, very, very end of your video, you don't want to stick around for too long. You actually want to end the video quite quickly. The reason being that if you look at retention graphs, and this is every single YouTuber I'm sure finds this, as soon as your audience feels like the video is at the end of the video, then they're going to click off and go to the next video, right? So you don't want people to click off your channel's videos. You want them to ideally go onto another one of your channel's videos instead of having to, find someone else to watch. So that's kind of how macro structure works. If you have macro structure, which is your general motif of the video, and you have lots of microstructures inside of it, then you can keep retention for a long time. And at some point in time, every video does have to end. You just don't want people to feel like it ended too late, essentially. Yeah, so that's how microstructure works. And if you understand that and microstructure, then you'll be in a very good place to make your videos very good. One last thing I should talk about with regards to structure. Ideally, if you are creating a journey, you want each part to get better and better and better and better. But there is a tricky thing with that, which is that if you were to have an ideal situation, actually what you really should do is you should put your best stuff first. And it seems a bit counterintuitive because you might think, well, why would I want to put my best stuff first when, I kind of want to keep my best stuff for the end because, everything else is going to kind of seem underwhelming if I don't do it that way. The reason for it is that people will actually stay for longer periods of time, the longer that they're invested in a video. So for example, even though I talked about cost before, it is actually easier to keep someone from minute 10 to 11 than it is to keep someone from minute 0 to 1. For the first few minutes, you have to work really, really hard to keep people's attention. When it comes to later on in the video, you can really start to do stuff like explore characters, explore themes, make things more complex. I'm going to take something from the manga author of Jujutsu Kaisen, which is a very, very popular anime. He had an interview where he talked about this idea that you start off with a basic premise and then you build more. That's the traditional storytelling premise, right? But when it comes to YouTube in particular, you're really putting your best foot forward because that might be the only chance you have to actually reach a new viewer. And if they've gone from your channel at that moment, they may never come back. So rather than worrying about putting your best stuff last, put your shortest, best stuff first, and then you can gradually lengthen out things as time goes on. You never want to get to the stage though, where you feel like you're just padding the video for length. Even though we talk about average view duration as being the metric that you're trying to aim for, or even average view percentage, I think actually of those two, average view percentage is much more important. Once the video drops below a certain level of quality or goodness, then I think just cut it and and just try to leave people feeling that your video is not the last video that they're going to watch from your channel, because if it is, then really, again, they might never come back, and that's not very good for your channel's growth or anything. So that's macro structure, and I hope that's been helpful. Now that you understand the whole structure of everything, I'm going to talk much more in depth about the individual parts of this hook event payoff thing. Okay, so this is a really exciting video because we're going to analyze a hook in depth. The hook is the most important part of your video because it determines whether someone's going to keep on watching your video or whether they're just going to drop off. The way that you have to think of a hook is that the viewer has an expectation from your thumbnail and title. So whatever idea that you've got in your thumbnail and title, you really want to reaffirm the click. Let's have a look at this particular video from Mark Rober. When you start off looking at the thumbnail here, well, first of all, this video has 71 million views, right? So I'm using this as a good case study of what works on YouTube. You can see that it's got him and it's got something that looks like it's big and colorful and that sort of thing, right? You know, some sort of explosion. What you would hope from the very start of the hook is you need that explosion to happen probably within the first 10 seconds. Otherwise, people may, they might click off. Don't hold off on stuff like that, because if you hold off on it, then people are just going to try to skip to that particular part of the video instead. You might think that you're just going to hold people to the end, but it doesn't quite work like that because people are smart enough to skip ahead in the video.
2, 1.
So there you go. So you have an explosion at the 3rd second of the video. So that's a really, really good part of the hook. Now, in this particular part of the video, what I'm going to talk about is all the different parameters that you can use to analyze videos based on their hooks, because ultimately, this course is going to be helpful, but what's really going to be the most helpful is if you have something that you can take away where you can analyze other people's videos that are close to your niche. If you have that, then you can basically use your skills to analyze any video and then adapt those videos to your own needs. And because YouTube and YouTube trends are constantly changing, that's going to be extremely useful for you, extremely valuable. It's basically like a license to get views and therefore a license to print money, right? Or like, become a big YouTuber or whatever, you want to do. We're going to talk about all the parameters that you can think about and go from there. To start off with, the first parameter to think about is what is the composition of the opening shot, right? The first part of it is you want your visual composition to be something that's bright and clear, ideally. Obviously, if your channel is a sort of moody, dark channel, sure, you can use that or whatever. But generally speaking, people's retention increases if you sort of have a brighter start to a video. And obviously you want things to be in focus and all that sort of jazz. Pretty obvious stuff.
1.
Here, 3 seconds, 4 cuts, right? At the start of any video, people's attention almost needs to be grabbed. Something that's really important about capturing people's attention is they may have just finished watching an ad at this point, if they don't have like a YouTube Premium subscription. So it's almost like you need to re-grab them and re-grab their attention. And the way that you do that is you need to have very sort of fast changes at the start. Having fast changes at the start is really going to help. Even if you're slower paced videos, just something visually that changes quite a bit is going to be helpful for your videos.
This is me reclaiming my title for the world's largest and...
We've reaffirmed the click and now you've got this first change. So something to think about is, it's not just a change, you've actually changed the voiceover setting, right? Now the voiceover setting has changed from Mark Rober being inside the actual situation to Mark Rober now doing a voiceover. That's one other change that you can have.
Elephant toothpaste experiment.
This is a very visually impressive thing.
This is a totally different kind of reaction we discovered in all our experimentation called devil's toothpaste.
And this is again, reaffirming that click, because that's the thing that was in the thumbnail. So if you do that, people are going to watch the rest of the video, even though like you may intuitively think, oh, I've shown all my cards, therefore people aren't going to watch the video. Not quite true. People come for a certain part of the video, but they will stay if they become entertained and that sort of thing, right? So don't hold out.
Which is insanely reactive and super dangerous. I'll explain why in a minute, but for now...
And even though you've just had that, you still are probably going to watch the video and keep on watching till that happens again, because you want to see it in depth and you want to, because that really was just a few seconds of like devil's toothpaste, right?
All our experimentation called devil's toothpaste, which is insanely reactive and super dangerous. I'll explain why in a minute, but for...
And that's super smart because he's actually shown it backwards, right? The satisfaction comes from when you show it exploding forwards. So by showing it backwards, you've created a teaser and really just reaffirmed to people, yeah, this is the video that I wanted to see. this explosion is really going to happen. And I think Mark Rober is really a master of storytelling like this.
Now, here's a hint.
Here, that was a very satisfying sound as well, and that was a satisfying boom. I wonder, to be honest, whether that sound was actually from the shot itself, or whether that sound was added in later. So sound composition is underrated as like a tool to help increase the satisfaction of the video, but it's something that you should really think about. We've talked about a little bit about sound, but when I say sound, there's like sound effects. You know, where can you get those from? You can get those from places like, you know, sometimes you just download them from like different YouTube videos and just, you know, extract the MP3 files if you want to. Try to use royalty-free stuff, obviously. You can use like an Epidemic Sound subscription, so that's a company that gives you royalty-free music and sound effects for a fee. YouTube Studio will have music as well, but sound design is something that you really should be thinking about for your videos too.
And if you look closely in both shots, I'm not holding the trigger.
And I don't know if you noticed there, but even for the transition from one cut to another, it went very quickly like this, and then actually the sound of like went there as well, right? It's very subtle, but if you can include little things like that, that'll make your video a lot better.
This kid is. In fact, that kid was the whole reason we were there at all, because this was a culmination of 8 months of planning to throw him the most epic birthday party ever. And all of this started...
Now, this is a lot. There are a lot of very, very cool shots within this 40 seconds, right? Actually, each of these individual shots, some of them are reversed, some of them are explosions, some of them are, you know, sort of flying drone shots. Try not to stay on any particular shot that you love for too long, even if it's the most interesting, you know, car ride or the most interesting sort of drone shot that you can think of. If you stay on it for too long, it's also not going to be interesting.
Inadvertently from a single surprise phone call.
That's a important technique as well. So I guess you can think of videos a lot like food. Actually, there's a lot of similarities between them. One thing that's really important with regards to visuals is this idea of a pattern interrupt. And this is actually, pattern interrupts are probably one of the most important concepts to get when it comes to engaging storytelling. Pattern interrupts, what they do is they are things that cause you to almost reset your perception of what's happening. A pattern interrupt in this particular case, you know, sometimes it can be a sound, sometimes it can be like a, but wait. I want to show you this hook, which is from this YouTuber. This guy had 0 subscribers before this video, which now has 5 million views. It's to prove that even if you don't have many subscribers, you can still make videos that really do well as long as you do the storytelling well.
Mr. Beast has become the real-life Willy Wonka, and he's hiding 10 golden tickets in 10 random chocolate bars. And for a chance to be in one of his videos, I'm gonna buy 10,000 Mr. Beast chocolate bars. But wait, we already have an issue.
That part there, but wait, we already have an issue. That's a pattern interrupt. The sound also indicates a pattern interrupt, right? That's a very abrupt change, and that actually keeps people's attention for longer as well. Obviously, you don't necessarily want to keep on doing it, because if you do it too much, ironically, the pattern interrupt becomes expected. But certainly, especially at the start of the video, that's something that's really important to do. I don't want to toot my own horn, but I just want to show you how I've personally done it on one of my videos that's upcoming. I don't know how this video is going to do. It's mainly just to illustrate the concept of the pattern interrupt. This is my video, Blender in 7 days, where I learned 3D modeling software in 7 days. And starting with the hook, I wanted to use a lot of fast cuts to start off with, a lot of very visually appealing cuts. I have subtitles that come up very quickly, and then some music that also sets the pace.
3D modeling is the art of making 3D art, and with it, you can create characters, worlds, and it can look so realistic.
Check out this animation. Oh. Now, I know that looked like, well, I know that was like about 10 seconds of work. It probably took me about an hour and a half to actually work on that. There's so many different components in that I wanted to get right. So here, you know, I just wanted to make the visuals change. And one, I guess, bit of pattern interrupt is I actually made this bit completely black. The idea is if you have something that becomes completely black and then something that pops up again, that's almost like a visual reset, right? It doesn't feel like a continuous movie, but it feels like a boom, like almost abrupt change, and then people pay attention to the thing that then pops up out of nowhere. That's why
3D modeling is the art of making 3D art, and
that's why I've started that. And so this visual with the tree in 3D is actually much more enhanced by that particular black part.
with it, you can create characters, worlds, and it can look.
And even there, you can see that I specifically had a black bit for it can look
so real,
so that this bit where I just made a joke about, you know, this also being 3D modeling. That part is also like visually a bit different too. These things are very subtle, right? None of them are going to necessarily make or break your video, but if you add enough of these like 1%, 3% kind of interesting visual things, then by the time you've done 40 of them or 50 of them, it actually makes it a very, very good video in the end. And people may not exactly understand why, like they may not understand to the depth of, you know, the way you will understand it as to why it's such a good video. But you will know that, you know, you put in a lot of effort, and these sorts of things are really felt more so on like a subconscious level almost. Let's check out this hook from Mr. Who's the Boss again.
Did you know that Audi has made a car that can physically transform?
Okay, something that's also important is movement in a hook. Whenever you look at a Mr. Who's the Boss video, he's not like, you know, like me where he just starts off sitting down and doesn't really like, you know, he just stays still and starts the video, right? He almost always starts the video looking as if he's stood up and then dropping underneath. Like it's like a big dynamic movement, right? Because movement grabs people's attention in the same way that the rustling in the bushes that might represent an animal grabs people's attention. Here, he's even got the zoom transition into the video too.
Did you know that Audi has made a car?
Also, you might have heard that like at the start, another subtle sound effect.
Did you know that Audi has made a car that can physically transform? That Xiaomi has made a robotic dog that's powerful enough to backflip, or that you can get a shoe that...
Again, talking about subtitles, I think subtitles are another very easy visual effect to add because it just creates more movement.
Prevents you from ever falling over. Welcome to my biggest inventions video yet. From extraordinary to astronomical to out of this world. So number 20.
There are ways to artificially create dynamism, I suppose, in a video. So for example, in this part of the video, I've actually, this is my video again, I've actually added this handheld part to make the camera look more shaky, even though the camera is like this camera, just on a tripod, not actually moving. Because I wanted to be like, oh, I'm going to try to master 3D modeling in 1 week, and we're going to turn this grey cube into... And it's just something that adds a bit more sort of visual dynamism. So that's also very useful too. Let's check out Airrack's video. So this is about a week ago. This is a really cool visual. And I think that increasingly I'm thinking about this concept. The opening visual is itself a huge component of the hook, right? It's the first thing that people see. It's something that should match the thumbnail. People will go to pretty extreme lengths just to match the visual to the thumbnail. I'll give you this one, for example. Now, this is one of my favorite thumbnails of all time. This is Ryan Trahan, who's a master at packaging thumbnails and titles and ideas. And he's got this Minecraft real life cube, right? So this is a very, very interesting thumbnail to look at, because if you know Minecraft, you'd be like, wow, like, what do you mean Minecraft real life? And so if you click on the video...
This is real life, this is Minecraft, and this is Minecraft with real life graphics.
If you think about it, right, he literally had the thumbnail thing for 1 second. This cube that he made from grass and dirt is for 4 words of footage. If you can really focus on that opening visual and really focus on the hook of the video, then you're going to do a lot better. Another one for Ryan Trahan's videos is the quietest room video. First of all, he's got the world's quietest room and the world's loudest room. And then if we go to...
I don't think you realize...
This one.
I don't think you realize how crazy the world's quietest room really is. Apparently
Again, the visual really matches the thumbnail visual as well. Bridging those two helps to reaffirm the click even better. What you say reaffirms the click even better. And the smoother that you can make that connection, the more people will feel like they got what they expected to get, which is fantastic. Like if you can do that, then you're really got a strong start to the video.
Minutes inside will drive you completely insane. That's what they're saying anyway. I don't believe that. I think that's baloney. I think that is a large pile of a meat-like substance. So I tried...
A Ryan Trahan hook generally goes explain, joke, something like that. If you can create something that creates a positive feeling, you know, very quickly, that's very good. Mr. Beast's sort of hooks, they just go big explanation, also sometimes a joke, ideally from like another character.
I commissioned professional Minecraft builders to build me extreme houses in Minecraft. Me and the boys are gonna vote, and whoever gets the highest votes will win 10 grand. And to kick things off, we have this $100 house turnaround.
Whoa!
What? No way, this was $100.
Kind of bland.
I feel like we kind of got ripped off.
I think that a lot of YouTubers really do this sort of explanation part and then they'll do the joke right afterwards and try to introduce a joke early because, you know, a video that's funny is going to be a lot better, right? As soon as you can make someone laugh, like even if it's just a sort of mild laugh, that's already a very, very good start to a video. And it's generally something that will keep people, you know, watching for longer as well. So try to include those jokes early. Let's just check out this hook again because I want to also explain that how you follow up the hook is you want the hook to start the story, right?
Mr. Beast has become the real-life Willy Wonka, and he's hiding 10 golden tickets in 10 random chocolate bars. And for a chance to be in one of his videos, I'm gonna buy 10,000 Mr. Beast chocolate bars. But wait, we already have an issue. You can only buy 21 boxes of the variety pack. How am I supposed to get 10,000 bars? Right away, things seemed impossible, but then I got an idea. This is Jim.
When you're talking about the hook, it's really important to then try to get the follow-up to the hook immediately. You want to launch right into the video and launch into the video premise and sort of start this journey almost without any break in between the hook. Something that some YouTubers do is that they will introduce the hook and they will introduce themselves and then talk about, you know, who they are and blah, blah, blah. It can work on some channels, but it's not good for retention. I personally think it's a bit of an old style of YouTubing. It's basically not something that's that good for retention. So really try to avoid it if you can. I mean, you'll probably watch more so like productivity YouTube and stuff like that. And then you'll see that happen more than, you know, retention based spectacle type YouTube. But essentially like, and this is just personal opinion, but you're essentially sacrificing viewer retention to talk about yourself. It's okay, maybe if you're thinking about it from the long-term perspective of like branding or whatever, you know, cool. But I think it's actually smarter to interweave, you know, that sort of description of your own character within the context of the video itself. Like you don't have to introduce it right at that second, right? Unless it's particularly important to the story. So try to avoid that if possible. Even with this course, everything that I say, you don't have to necessarily listen to all of it. Just take what's useful to you and adapt it to your own videos. So these are some of the components of a hook that's good in this retention videography style of video. But I actually want to make another video to talk about if you're interested in more so an explanatory or documentary type video, then you might need a different type of hook. And this is for a different audience. So if your audience is in the entertainment spectacle kind of audience, you probably don't need to watch the next video. But if you're more so someone like me who needs to talk more so about explaining things and trying to explain concepts, then you might find this next video more interesting. But definitely the components of this video are really important too. I'll catch you in the next video. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about slower paced hooks. And these are the kinds of hooks that are better for a more mature audience. For example, someone that is above 23 to 25 years old, someone who is maybe a university student or working professional. Audiences in this category, they may not respond to the quick editing style that you might do for a Mr. Beast video or a Airac video, for example. So the way that you communicate things across to them is also different. There are parts of YouTube where people value YouTube not just for the entertainment value, but actually for the educational value as well. So people come onto YouTube for basically two reasons. One is that they want to be entertained, or the other one is that they want to be educated. People that exist on this other more mature side of YouTube often want both. So in this video, I'm actually going to show you a few examples of really good hooks. I want to show you a set of hooks from case studies that I think are really, really useful for you. I think the first thing you have to note is that they all start off in a kind of interesting way where they impart some information quite quickly. Let's talk about James Jarney, because this video has 9 million views. He's got 1 million subscribers now. So obviously a very, a banger video for him for sure. And you can tell the pacing is
Let this circle represent $1 million. This is what $10 million would look like. This is what $100 million would look like. And this is what $1 billion would look like. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, has a net worth of 117 times this number. And then there's you. You're probably working a job right now, one that you got from the degree that you studied for in university. You probably don't have much in savings. Your living expenses seem ridiculously high. You feel as though you're not paid enough. You have credit card debt that needs taken care of.
Okay, let's stop the video there, because otherwise it's going to get a bit too depressing. That hook is very interesting because just that visualization, the aim of it is the same as any other video really. It's just to make people express this idea of wow. Like, I don't know how else to express that. If people feel like they've just learned something new and they're just like, wow, like I didn't know that before, or, wow, that's fascinating, then generally speaking, that's the feeling that you're aiming for with regards to viral videos for more mature people. Here, I'm going to show you Veritasium, who I think also does this very well, but you don't have to do it just through visualizations. I think that one very powerful technique is actually to do it through some little factoid of history that people can be interested in. So this video is called The Most Powerful Computers You've Never Heard Of.
In 1901, this ancient Greek artifact was discovered in a shipwreck off the island of Antikythera. 3D X-ray scans have revealed it contains 37 interlocking bronze gears, allowing it to model the motions of the sun and moon and predict eclipses decades in advance. Constructed around 100 or 200 BC, the Antikythera mechanism represents a sophisticated early computer, the likes of which would not be seen again for at least 1,000 years. Now, of course, this computer didn't work like modern digital computers. It works by analogy. The gears were constructed in such a way that the motions of certain dials are analogous to the motion of the sun and moon. It is an analog computer. Here is a simple analog computer for adding two numbers together. If you turn the black wheel,
that hook is actually kind of very different, right? I talked about Hook-Event-Payoff, but the Hook-Event-Payoff structure seems to almost, fall down to some extent when it comes to videos that have to do with education. And so your payoff is not necessarily the, oh, this person earned $100,000. It's more so this new fact that the person has learned that now they can take and they can sort of tell their friends about that fact, and they can be like, oh well, I learned something from a video today which is about the Antikythera computer. So it's a very different style of hook, and it's almost like the payoff is the little factoid or the little thing that you've learned from the video. Visualization is still really, really important here because it's very easy to talk about these sorts of topics. Like, actually, he used a lot of visualization here. He's had some dude in the ocean, the actual Antikythera thing being displayed. I'm not sure if this particular illustration was just made for this video, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was, because being able to show where you can rather than just telling is going to be a lot more nice for the person who's watching. They'll understand the context a lot better. They'll understand what you're actually talking about a lot better. And here he's gearing up for trying to use this concept to try to build onto the next part of the video, to build the complexity here. And now he's got this thing in Lego instead, which is, in your mind, you're actually visualizing the Antikythera computer from the golden one that you just saw. Here's another example of Veritasium.
Mathematics began as a way to quantify our world, to measure land, predict the motions of planets, and keep track of commerce. Then came a problem considered impossible.
This is actually a fantastic hook. Very, very slow in comparison to the Mr. Beast hook, or, the Dylan hook or whatever. Or like, in this video, I'm going to buy 10,000 Mr. Beast bars and we're going to do this, but we have this problem. Or, in this video, I'm being hunted by the military and if they can catch me, they will get $100,000. Here, the video is...
Mathematics began as a way to quantify our world, to measure land, predict the motions of planets, and keep track of commerce. Then came a problem considered impossible.
Here, you've got some little factoid. I mean, the fact is not particularly surprising because everyone knows what maths is for, hopefully. But it sets a context, and then you introduce this hook of the unresolved question. There came a problem that was considered impossible. If you made it to this sentence, you're probably going to stick around for quite a big proportion of the video, right? Because if something is considered impossible, then you, as the intellectual, mature, brainy person, you want to be like, what's the answer? I don't want to leave this question unresolved in my mind. That's why this hook is so effective, despite the fact that it's much more chilled out and it's much more sort of explanatory in nature.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Cold Fusion.
This is Cold Fusion, which is actually one of Mr. Beast's favorite channels, apparently. And I really like it too.
In science, technology, business, or history.
Look, There are no absolutes when it comes to YouTube. I personally think that you shouldn't include an introduction there, but I mean, you know, he has 3.34 million subscribers, so, you know, even if you don't do everything, you know, too textbook, you can still do okay.
Take a close look at this scene. It looks just like any other movie scene, but it's actually a recreation of a scene in The Matrix. But it's made entirely within a game engine. Yeah, so what, you might be thinking. You might also be thinking, while tech demos look realistic, they're always pre-rendered and they use visual tricks just to make it seem more realistic. But what if I told you that this was running in real time and running on console hardware right now, today, on the PS5, Xbox Series X, and even Series S? Scenes like this highlight what's so exciting about Unreal Engine 5 by Epic Games.
So that hook is very interesting, right? Again, more chilled out, but you've just explained something that is probably kind of mind-blowing. The fact that technology has progressed to the point where you can render something this complex in real time. So I think that that was a really good hook as well.
Hello, I'm Scruffy, and today I'm discussing some fun bits of adaptive audio in Wii Play, which was a Nintendo party game from 2006 designed to showcase the features of the Wii's flagship controller, the Wii Remote. It was a cute little game.
When I first watched this video, I remember that animation being like, what the? Like, that's so cool that he actually physically made this animation for this video.
Kind of felt like an arcade, with these 9 mini-games with very small gameplay loops, and the goal...
And this is something that he's actually talked about on his channel. The creator of this channel is named Scruffy. He's a musician, but he talks a lot about game music. And he actually talks about how with each one of his videos, he wants to create this almost sense of nostalgia. He wants his videos to feel like the game that he's talking about. Something like that is very rewarding for the viewer, and I personally found that hook really interesting because I haven't heard of this concept of adaptive audio, and I wanted to learn a lot more about it, especially because Wii Tanks was a game that I actually played back in the past. So as much as I love to talk about conflict and tension and stakes and everything like that, if you're having a video which relies on explanation, then just the joy of someone feeling like they're learning something new can be a rewarding payoff in itself. And you know, there's a lot of ways to do YouTube. This hook is very visually interesting. This is by Nathaniel Drew, who's a really well-known creator in the, I guess you would call it productivity space, but it's kind of productivity, sentimental kind of.
I've been thinking a lot about this phenomenon of feeling behind in life.
This is a very different hook. I think another component of a really good hook is actually relevance. For someone that's come to this video for people feeling behind in life, you know, you're probably feeling behind in something, right? So for someone to hear words like that, they're gonna watch the rest of this video because it's like, wow, like this video is really speaking to me as a person. So a hook can also be based not only on some interesting new concept. If it reaches someone on an emotional level or it reaches someone on a level where they feel like, wow, this video is made just for me, then that's actually a really good hook in itself. To wrap up this video, I've talked a lot about what are considered very non-traditional hooks in something like a Mr. Beast video, ZHC video, Airac video, but something that you see quite a lot on the side of productivity and sort of mature documentaries and that sort of thing. Ultimately, if you were to describe hooks in just a few sentences, hooks make people feel that they're rewarded for watching the video and that they will continue to receive rewards from continuing to watch a video. And if you can get that concept and get that right with your audience, then you're off to an amazing start. And then it's just about how you carry the rest of the video. I mean, we've just talked about the first half minute of a video, right? And we've already gone in this much depth. I think that that really sets you up for understanding what makes a good video in general. If you can understand what makes a good hook, then you probably extrapolate a lot of stuff to just the video in general. I hope you enjoyed this particular part of the course. I think the hero's journey, you just have to understand that it's a detailed method to go from A to B, where A is a character as they are right now, and B is a character by the end of the video. And fundamentally, well, people are actually the characters of their own lives. Every single person that watches your video is actually themselves someone going from A to B, whether B is they want to be more successful, they want to be more rich, you know, they want to be happier about something. So if you understand your audience like that, I think that's much more useful, but your audience can see maybe themselves reflected in the character as well. So when you're creating a character in a YouTube video, you have to keep in mind the characters that are going to draw people into your YouTube video are going to be the ones that people themselves can see themselves in, because if they have no empathy for the character, then they may not really relate to it. That's why something like, Squid Game is so relatable. So for example, let me give you some context. Squid Game is a movie where the main character actually starts off as very unlikable because, he doesn't return money and he does stuff like lie to his daughter a little bit because he doesn't have that money. When they were making Squid Game, they actually put in different things to make him more likable. Otherwise, the audience were going to get turned off. So for example, they put in a thing where they had like a homeless cat. He actually fed the cat and the audience could feel like, oh, like he's actually a good guy, and then empathize with him a lot better. Whereas if they had him just as this sort of cynical guy that's not really reliable or anything like that, then it's a character that's very hard to relate to. When you're making a character for a YouTube video, really, you're trying to make someone that is themselves relatable. Where people start off with perhaps can be something that is very relatable, This character, whether that's you yourself talking on the YouTube video, because you might be a character yourself, or you might be talking about an external character, they start off as something that is relatable, right? And so that's how you get people invested into like a character. This hero starts off as not necessarily super competent at one specific thing. They may have a relatable character in terms of character values and what they believe in, for example. And then they have this call to adventure. So something drives them to do something else, whether that's, the death of a loved one, or they have this compelling ambition that they must achieve. In my particular case, for example, in my Blender in 7 days video, for example, what I started with, I was like, I'm going to try to make a character model in 7 days. I'm going to show my friend the character model by the end of it. That was kind of me, self-plunging myself into this new world, because I thought that that would be an interesting journey for people to sort of see, regardless. And so it's almost like this call to adventure has to come with some sort of element of stakes, because in my mind, I had to add the friend element in, otherwise it's probably not going to be a very interesting video if I'm just like making something and making it more and more complex. So the friend element of, I'm going to show my friend this in 7 days, no matter what I made, then that would actually add a little bit more interestingness into it, because it almost like forces myself as a character to have to develop into the person that can do that, and I have to learn the 3D software. You have to think about what that means for you. It may not apply to you, especially if your video is not sort of journey kind of video, but I think that is useful. Meeting a mentor is the next part. So after you've been called to adventure, you meet the mentor, and that can be any guide. It's just because you have to really progress the story somehow, right? Because people in their everyday lives, they can't just magically get better at something without having some sort of instruction. So meeting a mentor is an important part of that. Crossing the threshold then goes into sort of the trials and failures of that particular journey. I think that that's really the bulk of what is the most interesting part on a YouTube video. What are the struggles that people come up with? And you have to have real struggles, because if you don't have real struggles, then it's not very interesting. I think one of my favorite examples is that Mr. Beast, he talked about some of his chase videos. So for example, videos where he got chased by a bounty hunter. And he said he always had to be relatively close to the bounty hunter, because if he was too far away and got too much of a head start, then it's not very interesting. There's no tension in the video, right? Because the tension comes from someone is always just about to catch this particular person, is just about to catch Mr. Beast. At the same time, he was really worried, because if he actually got caught by the bounty hunter because he does everything real, it would mean that the video would end immediately and all this stuff would be for nothing. So having real trials where people come across real conflicts is very interesting. So there are several different types of conflicts that you can have in a video. I think the most easy one to think about is external conflict. I've got this particular challenge and then something is in my way. So that conflict of, someone trying to overcome something is very interesting. So sometimes you can have internal conflicts. So for example, I don't have the ability to do something. I don't know how to model a 3D character at the start of my video. I only know how to make a cube, literally. It's just you don't know how to do something, or your character doesn't know how to do something at the start of the video. And that's why you make the video. That can be interesting, that you've got this person overcoming different obstacles too. The final one is a philosophical conflict. So for example, if someone wants to do something because of their morality, but then because of a situation that crops up, they have to do another thing. For example, more recently, Turning Red, a movie by Pixar, the main character, Mei, who is a little girl who listens to her mum all the time, now has to come across this philosophical conflict of sometimes if I listen to my mum too much, then I actually can't do things like see the concert that I want to see or whatever. I mean, that's a very basic example, but those philosophical conflicts actually give quite a bit of depth and meaning to a particular video and a particular character. So we go to the next stage where they've got the helper and they get sort of growth and new skills, and then you go to what's called death and rebirth. As you progress further and further along in the hero's journey, they have to overcome something about themselves in order to make it to the ending, make it to the happy ending, right? Or it might be something to do with other people. You know, they have to resolve some sort of relationship issue with another person. Finally, they return to their normal world, except the new world is different from the old world that they were in because it's slightly better for whatever reason. That's sort of the hero's journey explained a little bit. Now, as you can probably tell, I'm not like a super duper expert at the hero's journey, to be perfectly honest. The reason is because I think that you just really need to simplify this down quite a lot. Depth on YouTube is really hard for characters and in-depth discussions of things. The reason is because when you have character depth, sometimes the pacing is quite difficult. People can sometimes drop off if you're paying too much attention to one particular character. That's something that may change over the years. So that's why you see like people like Mr. Beast, for example, really have trouble with this. When you have a character that maybe it's the bounty hunter, for example, but trying to add sort of more of his life story and get people more invested is really difficult when you're actually also trying to keep people's attention for the entire video. You might be able to do it more easily if your video is more slow paced, but you have to really think about the balance between those two things. In the ideal situation, what should happen is that you should build character and also have the event happening at the same time. I think that this is something that you see in anime, but you currently don't see this in huge amounts on YouTube yet. I think that this will change over time, but I don't have really good examples therefore of this. How do you develop a character in a lot of depth on a YouTube video? There's the hero's journey in a nutshell. You can use it if you want. I personally don't think it's that useful. I think that you can just, simplify it down to, okay, where's someone starting? What are the challenges that they're facing? Face the challenges and then have the payoff afterwards. So I think more so in terms of Hook-Event-Payoff because it's just simpler to think that way. So Hook-Event-Payoff, and then you add stakes, you add tension, and then you sort of naturally achieve this hero's journey chart thing anyway. In this video, I'm going to give you some pretty specific and pretty hardcore tools for being able to articulate your videos better. The best thing that you can do when it comes to making a video or doing some storytelling, it's almost like you're trying to generate this very clear picture in someone's mind about what's happening on the screen at any one time. You have a message that you want to convey, so the best way to convey that is to have the person really understand what you're talking about. And this gets quite in depth. This is actually a very technical video, so if it doesn't make sense, that's fine, you can get by without it, but I think it's very, very helpful. And if you find that people are making comments like, I didn't quite get what you were trying to say, try using this video because you might find it very helpful. The first thing is to understand how people understand language, which is that people understand language filmically. This is from a book called The Science of Storytelling. Basically, when people are imagining things or hearing language, they are putting things piece by piece together in their mind. So you actually want to communicate things across in that same order. For example, let's say that I said, that was the glass that was drank by my dad. I mean, that's not grammatically correct, but whatever, right? Like that sentence is not a very good sentence, as opposed to my dad went and had a drink of the glass. Again, just saying those two sentences again. So one sentence is that glass over there was drank by my dad. The other one is that my dad went over there and had a drink of that glass. The reason that the second sentence is so much better is because it's in filmic order. If you try to think about how someone's imagining this scenario, if you say the glass over there was drunk by my dad, then you've almost got this idea of like, this glass is over here, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, this dad character pops up, and then he drank the glass, right? So it's actually a very confusing order of things. Whereas if you're just like, let's say that this honey bear represents my dad. It's like, okay, my dad is over here. He drank the glass. So when you're imagining it in that order, it's actually a lot easier than trying to imagine things the other way around. Because with that first sentence, the glass over there was drank by my dad, you imagine the glass first on maybe a table, maybe it's on the floor, maybe it's like in a cupboard, right? It doesn't make sense as to where physically this glass is in the person's imagination. But if you have, my dad over there, well, he's probably just, standing in the kitchen. He's probably not going to be anywhere super weird, like on the stove or in the cupboard or anything like that. Understanding that Like you generate that person first, that person then has the object in their hand, and then they drink that object or whatever. Being able to do that actually increases the clarity. Now, I know this is a really weird example. You may probably laugh at this video for like, you know, why are you talking about dads and glasses? The point is that when you're trying to illustrate something in your video, you want people to understand things in an active voice rather than a passive voice. So instead of saying that, you know, that object was affected by this particular thing, say that, you know, this character affected that particular object. That's a very, very technical point. That's what's actually very difficult to sort of convey even in a course. But if you're finding that people aren't really understanding what you're talking about, try that. Like, you know, for example, if you're trying to say something like, let's say that you're doing a challenge, right? And that challenge involves you trying to learn Japanese in 30 days. One way you could phrase that as the hook, you could be like, I went and learned Japanese in 30 days, which would be a very straightforward hook. But if you said something like, this Japanese textbook was learned by me in 30 days, that doesn't quite like have the same contextual clarity. Thinking about how you can phrase things in a way that is like character first and then the other thing will make more sense. It's just something that you have to observe pretty intensely from your videos. If this makes no sense whatsoever, don't worry about it, it's not too bad, but it will help a lot actually. I think that another point that is really important when it comes to communicating things across is trying to make sure to use the right language. Use the language that your audience understands, because if you use stuff that's too complex, obviously they're not going to get it. You know, I could talk about the physiology of cells and the epithelium, but you know, people would switch off and they'll have no idea what I'm talking about unless I told them, you know, your skin gets dry. That's much easier for people to understand, right? You're taking this communication ability across and really try to look out for things that make sense to you but aren't necessarily understood by other people. One way, again, to fix that is just to get other people to watch your video and give you feedback on like, oh, I didn't quite understand this bit. And you want them to be, you know, as honest as they can be when they're doing that too. So yeah, that's just a bit of stuff about communication. Unfortunately, I suffer from this a little bit, which is that I make things too complex for people to really keep wrapping their heads around. You don't want people to drop off on the way when you're trying to explain something. It's kind of ironic for this particular video because I've talked about some really abstract topics, but anyway, thanks for bearing with me for this part. We're going to be talking about something much more interesting in the next video, which is the context of hero's journey and how that might apply to your YouTube video. Okay, so this video is about viral idea fundamentals. So my personal tests, one is the water cooler test. When you have a video, can people actually talk about it and share it with each other simply? If they can't summarize your video in one sentence, then it means it's not a good video for word of mouth because people won't know how to communicate the video across to other people. The second is an authenticity test. Do I actually like the content that I'm making? Is it real and would I be proud to share it? If there's content that I don't think that I would like making, then I don't think it's going to translate across to the other person. And people can feel when you've made effort towards something you don't like it. 3, the breadth test. And I mean breadth with a D. So do people in different cultures or, you know, would people actually get the idea even if they don't really know that much about the topic I'm talking about? I've observed this from Paddy Galloway. Paddy Galloway is a YouTuber that talks about other YouTubers, and he could talk in depth about retention. He could talk in depth about average view duration, average view percentage, and all those sorts of things. But what he chooses to do is he actually picks well-known names and wraps it in a way that's interesting not only to people who are YouTubers, which is not a huge population necessarily, but also to people that are just interested in the actual YouTubers themselves. Because some people are just interested in how YouTube is YouTube, despite not being YouTubers themselves. I also think about breadth. One example from my own experience is with this Blender in 7 days video, I'm actually going to name it something like, I learned 3D modeling in 7 days, because that makes more sense than someone who might not know the software Blender, for example. So that's a breadth test. Relevance test. You know, is this topic relevant to someone? Would it be relevant to me in the past? If it's not relevant, then it might not be very interesting. Helpfulness depth test. How far can this particular video take someone? Are they actually searching for this information, and will it actually help take them from point A to point B? I think that if I can do that, even if it doesn't reach that many people, I still think that that actually becomes a worthwhile video and someone will actually appreciate that. Specificity test. Is it specific enough to look real? I think that if you have something that's too broad and doesn't have too much information in it that people can actually take as actionable steps, so for example, it's just inspiring or it's just this or just that, I don't find that personally that I like those videos, so therefore I choose not to make them myself. That's more so for in the context of videos which are aimed to help people. Visual test. Now this is a really unique test, I think, to YouTube compared to other platforms. If you can't make a title or thumbnail that people will click on, in other words, if it doesn't look like it would look good visually speaking, then it's going to suffer compared to an idea that is more visually appealing. One idea I've got in the back burner, for example, that I think will be a banger idea is the marshmallow test, because literally I can visualize the thumbnail already, literally a marshmallow with a colorful background. And I think that that would be very interesting. YouTubers who think about objects really think about this. If you look at any of Matthew Beam's thumbnails, for example, most of his thumbnails have really strong visuals that they can do very well. So for example, this one with like a abandoned car looking dirty. This one with the Batmobile made of cardboard is fantastic. This one with Mr. Beast burger in space, that's pretty cool. If you look at for example, Gork's art, he has a very unique style. He's at 1.9 million subscribers now, actually. Some of his best videos are ones where the actual visual is really good. So for example, painting this Nintendo Switch is really colorful and it's really quite cool. He's had other ones where he's just got this brush that is painted a different color on. This one painting a MacBook Pro. So that's all really interesting. I like this channel, which is actually very viral as well, called Made Stuff Here. So for example, here he's got a strong visual of something popping out of a box. One of his best videos is this one with like a curved basketball hoop. And so it's a very easily visual thing to represent. But if you're trying to represent a quite complex topic, then visually speaking, the thumbnail might not be attractive, unfortunately. So you really got to think about that too. I've talked about my own personal tests, but there's a book called Contagious by Jonah Berger, and that talks about virality as well. And so his framework is the STEPS framework. He starts off with social currency. So for example, if someone shares your idea, will it make them look cool? That's a kind of hard one to optimize for, but generally speaking, I think that if you optimize for helpfulness, probably that's a good thing. He talks about triggers and the T part of it. So will your video be brought up in any particular context? Mr. Beast actually does focus quite a lot on videos that are trending, which is why his Squid Game video did so well. It's at a few 100 million views literally at the moment. Because whenever people talk about Squid Game, they may even talk about Mr. Beast's version of Squid Game and be like, hey, like, have you seen this video where Mr. Beast had made a real life version of it? So think about the triggers too, because that triggers is something that might come up by word of mouth. Having a frequent trigger can cause people to, think about your video a bit more. Emotional valence is the E in STEPS, and this is actually very interesting. Imagine this sort of quadrant of people, and people can feel happy or sad, and then people can be high energy or low energy. I'll just start off with low energy sadness, which is just, well, literally sadness, depression. But if you think about high energy sadness, that's anger. If you think about low energy happiness, that's people feeling calm, relaxed. And if you think about high energy happiness, that's people, basically awe or inspiration. In terms of virality, you actually want people to be in high energy states. Specifically, that means awe, inspiration. It might, I suppose, mean anger if you wanted to do it that way and be a kind of negative YouTuber. Generally speaking, the reason that those videos tend to go more viral is because when someone is in a high energy state, they're more likely to do something as a result of that high energy state. So someone is very inspired by your video, or very much they find your video extremely funny, they will share that video with other people. Whereas someone that's kind of just like, yeah, this video is quite relaxing, they may not actually have that compulsion to share the video with other people. And if someone's just sad, well, they definitely won't have the compulsion to share the video unless they're like extremely sad or they found something particularly moving. This concept of emotional valence and emotional energy kind of does make a big difference to what might be a viral concept. Is this something, if you put it more simply, if this is a video that will excite people, then that is going to be more viral than a video that just sort of mildly appeases people. And obviously you can still grow on YouTube with calm videos. That's basically how many vlogs work. But even with vlogs that are viral, for example, the feeling that they give someone is a great amount of happiness or something, for example. So even then they have actually kind of a higher emotional valence. You basically just want something where people they feel like they get energy from it and they're more likely to be shared. If you're having something like an ASMR channel, probably not going to be shared. The person will probably be relaxed. Maybe it will go viral in its own right, but being shared by word of mouth, unlikely. Take this with a grain of salt, obviously, this concept. The P in steps of sort of practical value, can you have information in a way that is actually valuable to someone's life? If you can, so for example, if I was to make a video talking about how to become a doctor, then that could potentially do very well. And so the last S is stories. So fundamentally, if you're just divulging lots and lots of facts, probably not that interesting. People remember stuff better when stuff is in a story. So just keep that in mind. So those are some of the fundamentals of viral ideas. I'm not going to talk about this too much, but one last little thing I want to say about viral ideas is think about your macro CTR. So don't just think about things on a one video basis, because if you just do one-off videos, then you're just going to get one-off audiences. Think about how your audience on YouTube responds to your catalog of videos, right? Because that's fundamentally how you're going to grow. If you have a catalog that is completely random, then people may not watch, they might not bounce between videos as much as you hope. When you think about viral ideas, don't just keep on chasing one-off viral ideas. It's not going to work out very well for you. If anything, the worst thing that could happen to you is actually one of those viral ideas does very well, but doesn't fit in with the rest of your channel. And so what will happen is you might get 10 million views on a video, and then every other video you have is 1K to 10K views, and then the rest of your channel sucks compared to this one video that did really, really well. So that's actually the worst thing that can happen to you, even though it looks like a blessing in disguise. This comes in the concept of branding. That is going to take a huge amount more depth, and so I won't talk about it in this particular course. I'll make a course on it later, but it's going to be another story for another day because there's a lot of depth. Wow, you made it to the end of the course. Amazing. Now, this is a very long course. There's a lot to take in. My closing remarks are that enjoying YouTube is a really important part of the process. And this is not something to do with storytelling. This is just for YouTube in general. I think there's no point in doing something if you don't enjoy it. And when you enjoy something, that's really going to seep through into the content that you make and the way that you present things. If you take these principles, and you can listen to them again and again and again, because now you have the online course. If you take these principles and apply them diligently, I can guarantee you that your YouTube videos are going to be a lot better for it. You'll be able to see it in the retention graphs as well. So as long as your videos keep improving, then I can guarantee you you're going to get more views, more subscribers, and it will work out for you. But you have to intensely reflect on your videos, get feedback from other YouTubers, get feedback from your own friends. Now you've got the tools of the trade to be able to make these YouTube videos that can get millions of views, and that's very exciting. Oh, I'm personally extremely excited for you. So if you found this helpful and you do get a video with 1 million views, feel free to message me on Twitter or whatever. And I will hopefully see you around. It's been a pleasure. You make sure you take care. This lesson is going to be on videography and editing terminology. It's very important to understand editing terminology because the fact is, if you understand how to edit, then you're going to understand how to make better YouTube videos. If you have been on YouTube for a long time, and actually I suspect that's quite a lot of people, I don't think you need to have this part of the course if you understand concepts like A-roll, B-roll, cuts, transitions, J-cuts, and L-cuts. Those are all sorts of things that I'm just going to be talking about in this video. If you don't understand any of what I just said, definitely watch this video. If that's all familiar to you, just skip this video and go into the next one. Talking about A-rolls, there's a thing called A-roll and there's a thing called B-roll. A-roll is where you've got a talking head. So here is me. This is an example video that I've got that I've done talking to an AI dog. And so in this video, I've got some A-roll here, which is just really a talking head version of myself. It's no good if I'm just reading this in my own voice, because it's almost like I'm a crazy person talking about anything that's not A-roll. Probably counts as B-roll. Shots of objects or shots of scenery. It's just a shot that's not your main talking head shot, basically. It's really important to know the difference between those two concepts because I'll be talking about how you can switch up between the two to sort of keep retention better. So the next thing I'll be talking about is a cut, and a cut is very intuitive. It's pretty much the very first thing you do when you do video editing, but it's essentially where you go from one clip and then you go to another clip, or you go from one scene and you go to another scene. For example, here, I might be going from here. So I wonder, is this AI smart itself? So that would, this like part here where it's going from the dog to myself, that bit is a cut. Very basic concept. You might have already known that though. So what I might talk about now is actually this concept of J cuts and L cuts. Here, and I'm just using Final Cut Pro, but it doesn't matter because literally any piece of software can use to understand this course. What a J cut is well, it's where the audio comes before the video shows, and the reason that you're doing that sometimes is because you want it to be a little bit smoother. For example, if I was to show you this clip real quick. So I wonder, is this AI smart enough? That's just like a normal clip, right? Here, you've got the wolf, and then you've got myself coming up. But if I wanted to, for example, maybe make it smoother, then what I could do is I could actually shift it so that the audio comes a bit earlier. You can see the audio down here is earlier, but I am showing up later. So I wonder, is this AI smart enough that it can... And I'll show you again. So I wonder, is this AI smart enough? Sorry for blasting your ears with that. The idea of that is, especially when you've got like lots of A-roll, for example, you might want to use a J cut. And the reason it's called J cut is because you can see it's vaguely shaped like a J, and that makes things a little bit smoother. The other version of that is obviously called an L cut, and that's where you're doing the opposite, where you're bringing it in like this. It can become my companion, doggy style. Sorry, that, by the way, don't use a joke like that, because that caused the biggest dip ever for my videos. I learned now doggy style jokes do not work. I don't really use L cuts that often, but that's what an L cut is, and naturally it's shaped like an L with the audio at the bottom and the earlier video clip at the top, I guess. When it's gone directly from one to another scene, it's called a cut. But when you're actually using, stuff to transition between them, well, it's called a transition, naturally. So the most basic transition is, for example, a cross dissolve. I'll just show you what that looks like here. So this would be a cut. So I wonder, is this AI? But this would be a sort of cross dissolve. So I wonder, is this... And that counts as a transition. Usually in your editing software, there's some extra fancy stuff that you can do with it. In Final Cut Pro, for example, if you double click on it, you can like mess with the different timings of the transition or whatever. But yeah, cross dissolve is a very basic one. And there's other things you can do, like there's like slides, for example, where it's like sliding from one to the other. So I wonder, is this... There's all sorts of variations of transitions that can be useful in certain circumstances. For example, cross dissolves can signify the passage of time, for example. I would just be careful not to overuse them. If you're like a beginner editor, your temptation is to use it for everything. Sometimes you might think that they make things smoother, but actually they don't have as much of an effect as you want. So it's actually better sometimes to just cut, keep it simple, and don't use any transitions whatsoever. In terms of camera movements, there's different things that you can do with a camera. If you're doing a pan, you might physically take a camera and then pan it like that, which is like a horizontal or vertical pan. But also all that sort of stuff you can do, in your editing software, of course, as well. For example, in Final Cut Pro, if I wanted to, what you can do is use a thing called keyframing. And if I wanted to try to do a pan here, then I can use a transform. And you don't have to memorize this. This is just a very quick thing. So I might add a keyframe here and then add another keyframe over here. And then, but I'm just going to shift my face over there, right? So if I wanted to do this, that would be a pan in that direction. Similarly, if I wanted to zoom, I can use a keyframe and just literally go and scale it up for the keyframe instead, so it would create a zoom effect instead. And there are different plugins that you can use to make this quicker as well, so you don't need to do keyframing necessarily. And other software like Adobe has a keyframing thing. I'm sure, like I know DaVinci Resolve will have a keyframing thing as well. So every single software will give you the ability to virtually manipulate the camera. Naturally, a crop is, well, this. So if you crop it, there's different types of crop. A crop can be just a very literal crop of something, like this, for example, and then click done. And then, instead of zooming in, it's like literally taken off some of the footage there. One specific type of crop is called Ken Burns. What that is it's kind of like a zoom, except instead of bothering to keyframe it, it's sort of already keyframed it for you in a sense and created the like ease in and ease out transitions. Here, if I was to apply Ken Burns to here, what would happen is when you look at it, it will slowly sort of move in depending on how long the clip is. I'm actually going to talk about camera distances for a second, because the way that you compose your shots actually changes the feeling of that shot. You can mix up your camera distances, and that can add a lot more depth to your stories. I've actually already made this public in like a 100 tweet thread. You've got extra wide shots like this, and naturally the camera is capturing a lot of the scene. You're trying to emphasize the relation of the character to that scene. For example, if you've got a scene that's like really, really beautiful, for example, you might use an extra wide shot, and naturally you have a tendency to do that. Here is an anime, for example, from Makoto Shinkai, and again, just really emphasizing like the beauty of the animation in that particular scene. You can use a wide shot, which is sort of still focusing on the surroundings of the person. Here's a medium shot. Probably medium shot is the most common shot for dialogue because the person is much more close up. Instead of having the whole body, you know, you might just have like part of their body here. There's still some context for surroundings, and probably when you think about this particular shot, if you're focusing on the general idea of someone or just, you know, sort of what they're saying but not putting huge amounts of emphasis onto it or anything like that, then a medium shot is a really good shot. But if you want to really start to emphasize the emotion of someone, then you might use a close-up shot. So for example, here's a shot from Whiplash. The real emphasis on these sorts of shots is like to capture the expression that might be very subtle on the face. And in this particular case, you've got Eren from Attack on Titan, and this is a really like close-up shot. On one hand, it can be extremely dramatic and useful. On the other hand, you might be made into a meme. There's different types of shots depending on how many people are in them. Naturally, they're called single shot, two shot, or three shot, respectively. It's not just about distance, but about the angle of the shot as well that changes the feeling of the shot. So if you've got a very front-on shot, like I've got here for Mikasa from Attack on Titan, this is Senju Gohara from Katari, and here's another shot, I can't remember which movie this is from. If someone in real life is like facing you front on, you yourself might feel a little bit uncomfortable. So if you're looking for a shot with like a bit more tension, this is like a very good shot to use. Whereas a three-quarter shot is someone looking off to the side a little bit, and actually in body language as well. If someone's facing to the side a bit, it's a little bit less intense. Actually, an example from medicine is if I'm talking to a patient, rather than being front on, as some doctors' offices may have, I will usually have the patient sitting a little bit off to the side because that's more comfortable for them. They can sort of have the space and not feel like they're being confronted by me, the doctor. In film, you can use that, and there's a bit less tension, but you still got enough of the face to see what's going on. Also, it's quite cool from a three-dimensional perspective as well. A profile angle is one where you've got a shot on the side, and this can really view the intent of a character. It's like they're looking towards a goal, and you're kind of curious as to what they're looking at in the distance. So you might consider this shot when you've got a character with a certain motivation, for example, just wanting to do something, or you just want to sort of give more character to the character. A three-quarter back angle is kind of a bit of a more mysterious shot. You don't really put as much focus on the person themselves. Instead, the focus is on whatever they're looking at. I like the idea of back angles. So back angles are really cool. And naturally, it's a shot from the back. The really interesting thing about back angles is not even how cool it is when you're looking at someone from behind and they're walking to the distance or something like that. It's actually that small dopamine hit that someone might get, or that small emotional beat that someone might get, where they're walking to the distance, but then you suddenly go to their face or something. Like, you know, if you saw this shot and then someone was looking like this, you'd be like, oh my god, like that was completely like an unexpected thing. That back angle can be used as a setup for like future angles as well. POV, naturally, seeing through the character's eyes. And this is actually a shot that's probably often used in YouTube just by virtue of people when they're vlogging. That's something that can make someone feel like they're in a particular moment, which is cool. I'll just briefly talk about vertical angles as well, because we talked about all sorts of horizontal angles. So like front on, three quarters, side profile, and back. Vertical angles are kind of like your bird's eye view. This is from Mr. Beast. You often use bird's eye angles or like really high shots to emphasize the scale of something. High angle is a little bit different from bird's eye. So bird's eye is like you're looking from the top down. It's actually meant to make people look small. So here is a Mr. Beast shot where it's obviously shot from a helicopter, right? So that kind of does make them look small. Here is something that Ryan did. I think he's done a high angle shot to make him seem small. Like the fact that he's got like his body language like this as well, and trying to show this weakness or whatever, which is pretty subtle, but you can see how camera angles can change the feeling of just a single scene or a single cut quite dramatically. If someone's at eye level, naturally that feels like we're on equal footing with them. Low angle, it actually emphasizes the significance of whatever else is staring at you, because now you are the one in the weak position. Worm's eye view is like the exaggerated version of that. He's just a kid, but he looks threatening when you're a worm. Anyway, if you wanted to see the rest of this tweet, you can just search for WYT and 100 and you'll be able to find that. That is all of videography and editing terminology and camera angles down. I'm sure like more stuff will come up, but I'll just talk about it when we get to that point. In this video, I'm going to be talking about some fundamental concepts in story. So this is a really important lesson in story because To understand how to make story work in a YouTube video, you have to understand why people are listening to stories or even watching stories in the first place. Stories are something that's very psychologically embedded into us as human beings. We care about stories because stories are things that help us to survive in the world. You know, when you think about a caveman, for example, a caveman might be telling another caveman a story about, hey, our friend, let's call him Jeff, the caveman, he went down to the local lake and then he got scared, and when he looked up, there was a monster and the monster ate him. That's an interesting story to cavemen because of the fact that if you listen to the story, then you avoid the pond that the guy got eaten at, and therefore your life has been saved, right? Even though stories these days aren't going to change your life to the point of life or death, the underlying psychology is still there. Really understanding this lets you understand every aspect of why stories exist and how to optimize for story. Why do we care about stories where we can relate to the character? Sometimes people will watch a story and be like, oh, this guy, like, he's just doing all this stupid stuff. Like, of course, like, I can't relate to this character, so I'm not going to get invested in the story. Again, when you go back to the example of Caveman, it's kind of like, hey, if this story doesn't matter to me because it's about some far off dude that I don't know or it doesn't even relate to me, then why should I care about this story? And then you can discard that sort of story from your brain. In the case of like a save the cat moment, for example, if someone does something really cool in a story, our intrinsic desire a little bit is not just, oh, I think that person is very cool. It's actually, I wish that I could do that thing that they just did. That's actually the underlying desire. This whole concept of a story as a survival mechanism also goes back to, the amplitude of a story as well, right? Because when there's a potentially bigger reward, then theoretically we feel like the story is more useful. And that's why Mr. Beast has captured this thing of a spectacle where it's like, okay, like this is not a normal amount of money. $100,000 given to someone or $1 million given to someone is kind of like a life-changing amount of money, right? That amplitude of the story really makes a big difference. The amplitude of a story doesn't just have to be about money, right? For example, in the anime Blue Lock, which is about soccer, it's actually about someone who's reasonably good at soccer, but then he becomes like incredibly good at soccer. That amplitude is also like kind of interesting. The last concept I would give, tying back to this survival concept, is actually talking about progression in a story. We care that a story progresses because as soon as it stops progressing, I'll give an example. Like, have you ever been at a dinner conversation where someone's talking about something and they just go on and on and on and on and on? It just seems to go on forever. The story doesn't seem to be going anywhere. That's a bad story. But why is it a bad story? I mean, each individual element might be interesting. Maybe they went to Japan and they did this and this and this and this and this and this and this. Is that interesting? Probably not. The reason is because it has no progression. When someone's showing you a whole bunch of photos from their trip, that's not necessarily indicative of a progression of some kind. That leads to another fundamental part of story, which is that stories have to be going towards some change. If there is no change in the person who's a viewer, and if there's no change in the characters in the story, there's no point of the story in the first place. I always keep tying it back to survival, but if someone has not learned something that has helped them survive, then the story is kind of a waste of memory. Some people might counter this by saying, I don't feel like my life is changing by watching this story. In fact, sometimes I just watch something because it's funny. But even for something like humor or jokes, actually that itself is a mini story that contains tension and then relief and then probably growth/progress in the sense of it does contain like a message inside of it where you understand something different about the world because you've watched that joke. And that's why something like a punchline exists. It's a punchline is almost like the correction of your current model of the world. Because if it was a joke is not very funny if it's something that you're already expecting, right? So if it's something unexpected, then that makes it a funnier joke, better story, and because it's gone back to the whole survival thing and trying to, collect these like lessons of humanity. And those lessons are what we call stories. Now, in the next video, I'm going to be talking about YouTube specific stuff about story because YouTube is a very unique platform for stories to exist on. Let's go to the next lesson. Now, I want to talk about some YouTube optimized storytelling structures, and these are microstructures, so you can just see and maybe understand how to think about how things are being set up in a YouTube video. Because a YouTube video is, of course, course, a really long video that has a macro progression that goes from A to B, B being whatever the promise of the video is. But in between is a lot of individual parts. And I think that if you master those individual parts, then you can make a really, really good video. I want to expand a little bit on the Hook-Event-Payoff model that I talked about in the version 1 of the course, because sometimes it's a bit more subtle. It's easier, if you're thinking in the Mr. Beast style of the Hook-Event-Payoff thing, but I want to show you another example from Airac in this particular case. This is a video Capture the Flag in real life, and in this video, him and his friends are trying to capture the flag. Inside this video, this is at the 6-minute mark of the video, you can see that actually there's a re-hook, but that hook is something that creates anticipation. The event plays out, and then the payoff is when that hook actually ends.
I was on this road, and then we'll be there.
All right, I'm calling in play number 2. For my second play, I'm gonna go after Tyler. Sorry, Tyler. Not really, though. Tyler's a good guy. He never breaks the law. So, to throw Tyler off, I'm going to hire off-duty police officers to arrest him and throw him in the back of a cop car. Can't capture the flag in the back of a cop car. It's kind of my idea. I'm a genius and handsome. Tyler's done.
So that's the hook, but you can see that the hook is not a very direct, I'm just going to call the cops on Tyler. It's actually interlaced of humor, some different cuts, a GTA screenshot to almost provide like a little bit of foreshadowing in a sense, even though it's not Tyler getting caught, but the foreshadowing is, this is what's going to happen to this poor boy. So the most important point of this hook is that it creates this anticipation. And remember, I talked about how retention is anticipated reward times immediate emotion. Well, this is the anticipated reward type bit, and you can feel yourself that it's going to be a funny scenario. The payoff is probably that you're going to laugh at this confrontation, but you want to see how it plays out, because in your mind, you're not 100% sure of how it's going to play out.
Our tail right now, I think the chance they catch us is basically none.
Yeah, we can outrun them.
Hit it, hit it, hit it. Oh no.
Step out.
Okay. Oh, it was nice knowing y'all. You guys pick me up from jail?
So this is all events.
I thought I'd try. All right.
Okay, you, Tyler.
Those are my boys right there in the cart. They said they're gonna come pick me up. Oh, they're going the wrong way. Where are they going? Boys! And just as I planned, my play went perfectly. Tyler had been reset back to the
And now we've got payoff.
beginning. That idiot. And now it was me who had the lead. I'm an adult playing a child's game. Oh, wow.
So a bit of the difference between the traditional minigame hook event payoff is now you've actually got hook event payoff progression. The progression is a bit where it's like, okay, it's not just that this event has occurred, but actually that this event is now significant to the plot. There's a few more games that these guys do. I definitely recommend it if you get the chance. But stringing together a lot of these, when you've got the first game, because he actually explained how the games work earlier on, people become trained a little bit with some sort of structure in their head as to how the game works. And so they want to see how the game plays out. And all these mini games inside the video actually make this otherwise, it could be a very boring video if it was just them physically running towards capturing a flag, right? So by including these games, you're actually enriching the video quite a lot. So in your videos, think about how you can add bits of more tension and just more funny stuff that will make your video a lot richer. Now, another way to think of this, one of my favorite books of recent, and I'm probably going to do a video on this as well, is Manga in Theory and Practice by the author of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which sold hundreds of millions of copies in the manga and a really, really popular anime. He talks about this model of the Ki Sho Ten Ketsu model, and to show you what that actually means, okay, this is what is called the immutable rule of storytelling. Ki Sho Ten Ketsu is in Japanese, and the key part is where you have the protagonist, or you're setting up the protagonist, ideally in the Save the Cat fashion where, the audience actually likes the protagonist or can relate to the protagonist. The show part is the development. So usually this is the introduction of a conflict or an antagonist. That can be a literal antagonist, like in the case of Capture the Flag, or a fight, or it can be something more abstract, like an internal kind of conflict. But there has to be some conflict there for the hero, which is going to be you in the video, to progress against, right? To illustrate this concretely, the key part is where you're introducing the protagonist, or the whistle is blowing at the start of a soccer match, for example. And so you know that this is the setup. The show is that the opposing team appears and the game sort of builds up with uncertainty. And that's where you've got the antagonist there in this literal sense. Then you've got the 10 that comes after the key and the show. And that's where you've got this twist, which is actually, it's not just that you have an antagonist, but that the antagonist is providing these challenges that are rising and becoming more and more difficult. But actually now you've got these mounting extra challenges that happen, and the more challenges or the harder the challenges that come up, then the more like you're facing against these opponents. So the teams in the soccer example, they present different obstacles in cycles of attack and defense, and then finally you get the ketsu, which is the equivalent of a payoff, and that's when the protagonist finally achieves victory and everyone's happy and the viewer's happy and you're happy. Sports naturally conforms to this structure, but actually there's many things in life that conform to this structure. In the book, Araraki says that this structure actually is in everyday life and anything that you do. So when you're eating a meal, for example, you've got the key part, which is seeing the meal, the show part, which is that you're starting to conquer your meal. It's not an antagonist exactly, but it's still something that introduces different elements of newness to you, or different elements of like experience to you. And the 10 part might be different aspects of that experience, and then the ketsu part will be like, okay, I've finished the meal and now I feel happy and satisfied that this is like the greatest meal ever. Really the key thing to realize is that the Keisho Tenketsu model or the Hook-Event-Payoff model, all of them conform to the model of the science of fun, which is that you've got stress, then you've got relief, then you've got progress, and then growth. So Keisho Tenketsu or Hook-Event-Payoff are just ways to implement that psychological principle, but in a story. To illustrate this Keisho Tenketsu model further, I'm going to show you a clip from an anime called Blue Lock, which is amazing. So I want you to have a look and think about like what's happening inside this. To very, very quickly summarize, Blue Lock is about soccer, and these high schoolers are put into this literal building, which is Blue Lock, and they have to compete in soccer, and if they manage to get to the top of Blue Lock, then they get to play for Japan. If they don't, then their careers are essentially finished. So everyone really cares in Blue Lock about winning the matches, because it might be like a life and death situation in terms of their soccer, because they all care about soccer. And here we've got the blue team is actually losing by quite a significant margin against some really, really difficult opponents. Well, this is part of an episode, but it still obeys this Keisho Tenketsu model, and I'll just explain bit by bit how it's going.
マークス使っても無理ってことはさ、こいつらからゴールを奪うときは自分の限界を超えてるってことでしょ。俺の中の怪物が言ってる。絶対絶命ってやつはビビるとこじゃない。ワクワクするとこ。ポチロ、面白いじゃん。
Okay, so there you set up the key part, and this key part is showing Bachira, who's this guy who's basically got this monster inside his head that tells him how to play soccer. By introducing and making this character very, very rich, you become invested in this character and also his stakes and his motivations. So then it makes the development, or when he faces the antagonist, interesting, because you want to see, like, you know, how is this going to play out. So this is the first.
超速シザーズ。左と見せかけて右だろ。ルーレットスピン。ザです。
So quite literally, he's overcome the first antagonist, and then you've set up the structure for how he's going to overcome the other antagonist, which is basically that he's going to show off these like crazy ball dribbling skills. The twist part of it is these mounting obstacles. You got 10, 10, 10, 10. You can have 1, 10, or you can have like 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, and just like have lots and lots and lots of twists that prevent him from getting to the final goal, which is the ketsu part.
早めがね。だったな。
ルーク、用意どんなら俺に分があるぞ。アウトサイド、左か、右、
自分、空中エラスコ。できた。ちゃんちゃんイメージ湧いてくる。
すまん、やべえやついった。
ゴールまであと3人ぽっきり。3人で一気に潰せ。いいね、いいね。どうせ俺たちは世界一のストラ。
With his show and the 10 part, you can see that the tension keeps on rising, and you can hear that in the music. As he's getting closer and closer to the goal, you're like, oh my god, he's gonna get it, I think. Then, well, we'll just let it play out.
になるためにここにいるんだ。お前らくらい倒せなきゃ、それまでのストライカーってことだね。あと3。
すげえよ、バチラ。なんて楽しそうにサッカーすんだよ。お前の言う通りだ。これが俺のサッカー人生で最後の真剣勝負だとしたら。
2、1。
絶望なんて負けてからすればいい。今はただ 勝つためにバンてめえふざけ見た俺のスーパースペシャルゴールほら楽しくなってきたっしょ
The Ketsu is not just the goal, but it's the reaction of everyone to the goal as well. For him, in his progression as a character, but also for the other characters' progressions, and also for this one moment had changed the entire match. So it's a very, very clutch piece of story writing, and even in just that 2 minutes, you can see the key show Tenketsu model play out in a way that makes people feel excited, or makes you... I certainly loved watching Blue Lock. So I hope this particular lesson provides a bit of insight into how those payoffs work. You can see that they always come after some sort of big tension, and then they have the relief. So if you don't use a Keysho Tenketsu model, or you don't use a Hook-Event-Payoff model, it's fine. But you've just really got to think about how you're playing with people's anticipation, playing with people's feeling of tension in their body, and then how you're going to honor that tension that you've built up. You find that on the flip side, the most boring videos that you ever watch are ones that are tensionless, or you just find that the tension is weird, or that you don't relate to the character. Keysho Tenketsu forces you to do that right. The show and the twist has specific conflicts and considerations, and it's got the Ketsu as like, well, you have to have some progression, because if you just have a tragedy, then you know, you can make tragedies and stuff, but then people won't feel happy. They'll probably feel depressed. You'll notice that the way that it gets reflected in retention actually is that if you build up something, but then there's a failure, then actually that causes a slight dip in videos. And if it's building up and then it leads to a failure, that's going to continue on into the protagonist continuing to try, then that's different. But if it's just like purely build up, failure, then people just feel bad, right? So if it's build up, failure, but still going, and like the tension is rising therefore, and then you eventually get to the victory, then that's something that makes people feel really good. And that's how to master tension and mini stories in a video, and I'll catch you in the next one. In this lesson, we're talking about YouTube stories and the fundamental concepts behind them, because I've talked about universal storytelling principles in the last lesson and the reasoning behind why stories exist. But YouTube is a very specific and very special platform. I think the most important thing to start off with YouTube is that story is not starting from the video itself, right? It's actually starting from the title and the thumbnail, but even before that, it's starting from people's conceptualization of you as a character or YouTuber or whatever. YouTube viewers are always going to have a different set of priors. In other words, you can't think of your audience as this one homogeneous mass. Actually, you've got some people that have never heard of you or what you're talking about, some people in the middle who probably are pretty comfortable with what you're talking about, and some people who are really deep into your niche and possibly know more than you about your niche, right? So now that you understand that you've got these different groups, your first decision when you're making any kind of story is how broadly do I want to appeal to these groups? If you appeal to a very narrow set of people, it means you're going to get a very narrow set of views, but those views will be very deep in a sense. For example, I posted this video called Obsidian as a Second Brain. It's a 2-hour-long tutorial just talking about this obscure piece of note-taking software called Obsidian. When I posted it, I thought, oh man, like no one's gonna watch this because, you know, the people that care about Obsidian is like a very low number of people compared to like Notion, for example, or other types of software. But somehow still at the time of recording, 180,000 people have watched it. Having such a narrow focus on one very specific piece of software was good in a sense, because it meant that there wasn't a lot of competition for that particular term or that particular software. So making one of the best videos in the niche was not quite as difficult. But what you do sacrifice from not having a broad audience is that anyone that's not even aware of that software will probably not end up clicking on that video. Really, you've got this kind of trade-off not only on the micro video perspective, but also on your channel as a whole. Do you want to cover the biggest audience possible, or do you want to cover a narrow audience and then compete with like less people for those people's views? If you're someone that is very skilled, I think that going for broad appeal is definitely the better option, because you just have more people to appeal to. When you see videos that are getting millions upon millions of views, it means that, well, this is probably going to appeal to maybe tens of millions or hundreds of millions of people. to start off with in terms of the idea. Whereas if you've got something that has 100,000 views, that actually might be extremely good, or even 10,000 views, that might be extremely good, because if you've got 10,000 people in the world that know that piece of software or whatever it is, the narrow topic that they care about, then you reach your maximum. Whenever you're comparing your success for your channel to the success of other channels, you really have to understand that context of like, okay, this guy is like the biggest person in my niche, but he's got 100k subs, right? That almost will be one of your ceilings, unless you go and expand your audience to these broader audiences and make something that, for example, for me, Obsidian is a very niche piece of software, but productivity is something that applies to every single person in the world. I might want to think about creating a lot of Obsidian videos to start off with, and then eventually when I have more views, branch into productivity. So now I'm going to start talking about some YouTube specific storytelling concepts. Actually is different than any other platform because the story starts from the title and the thumbnail. The reason that you should think about it like this is because when someone is clicking on your video, right, they've actually already got some sort of emotional setup before they even enter the video. So they have developed immediately an expectation of what the video is in their mind after look at your title and thumbnail. That's why it's so important in that first few seconds of a video to reaffirm the click. Reaffirming the click just basically means giving people a sense of, I clicked on this video and it was worth my time to click on this video. At least these first few seconds seem promising. That's all you're trying to do in that first maybe 4 to 7 seconds. There's a lot of different ways to do this, which I'll actually cover in another lesson called Mastering the Hook. So actually the autoplay is another, you can think of almost that as like a second thumbnail. It's where you've hovered over the video and the first few seconds of the video have started playing. That means that the first few seconds is even more important to get right from a visual perspective. So this next principle is something that I feel like for a lot of people will explain and clarify a lot about how retention works. That is that retention is a function of anticipated reward and immediate emotion. From a psychological / neuroscience perspective, dopamine is the neurotransmitter that basically spurs people towards action. If you have rats, for example, that have dopamine cut off, then they just don't do anything. So when someone has a high expected reward, they're actually taking, like, that dopamine has increased and they're actually taking more action. When people have a low expectation of what your video is going to be, then obviously they're not going to click on the video and watch the video. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about fundamental concepts in story. And I've been thinking about storytelling a lot. I've been thinking about retention a lot. When you think about retention, you got to dive deep. Why does retention exist in the first place? Or why is it that people choose to watch stories in the first place? Well, first of all, from the retention perspective, retention is equal to anticipated reward times immediate emotion. It's my little equation. We need to think about why stories exist in the first place to understand what makes stories good. I think the best way to put it is that when we were cavemen, talking to other cavemen, trying to impart stories to each other is a way of imparting useful information to each other. Caveman talking about how there's a lion next to a lake and every time someone goes there they get eaten. Like, that's a very intrinsically interesting story and a very useful piece of information for another caveman who can now choose to avoid that lake and not go there and not get eaten. So if you come back to the modern world, then the deeper psychological framework is that stories, and therefore retention, they're all things that are tied to something that helps you optimize for your survival. Although, of course, there's never a phrase like that, and you never feel that when you're watching a cat video or anything. But let's talk about this formula of retention equals anticipated reward times immediate emotion, because then I can help to illustrate it a little bit better. If you, for example, had a video where someone was earning a lot of money, someone was earning $100,000 or $1 million in a competition, then that's interesting because that story helps to, in a deeper psychological sense, impart to you the method for being able to do that, right? But then you might have a story about survival, for example. Like if you have a fight between two people and then you're wondering about what's the outcome of this fight is really interesting, then it's kind of like, okay, I want to see who's the winner of this fight, and also not only that, but see how they won the fight in the first place. If you think about a video where there's an invention of some kind, that is related to novelty, and then that extra information that you get is something that actually gives you a little bit of a reward as well. Because a big part of why humans are at the top of the food chain is literally because we just managed to figure out a lot more stuff than other animals. Anyway, that's a description. So again, retention equals anticipated reward times immediate emotion. All of the stuff I've just talked about is related to the quality of an immediate emotion, or different ways that immediate emotion occurs. Or even if you think about a romance kind of story, then that's something that's universal to people. So basically this whole caveman analogy helps to let you really understand what it is that fundamentally groups people in terms of story. Just having this framework in mind, you'll start to notice how all story is tied to this in some indirect form or another. But if a retention is an anticipated reward times immediate emotion, then you have to try to think like, what is good in a video, right? Good is having something that gives people that sense of reward, and then it's the frequency and the amplitude of that reward itself. So for example, a video I worked on with Drew Does is I spent 100 hours in capsule hotels. This video had lots of different mini arcs inside of it. It's because those mini arcs were novel, they were interesting, and they came at a frequency that meant that the viewer never got bored because they were always feeling like they were getting some new piece of novel information, which is something that helps people keep interested. That frequency of like the many different mini arcs is one part of it, but then you've got the amplitude. So the actual capsule hotels themselves are very interesting. And so the robot restaurant which came up, that was interesting too. And so we tried to layer like these really interesting individual bits in that particular video. If you have that frequency and you have that amplitude of interestingness, then of course you layer that across like a longer form narrative. That's something that can keep people's retention and keeps people's interest, and they'll feel quite good about it. So that might be a way to describe the immediate emotions that are given throughout a video. But how do you describe an anticipated reward? So the way to think about anticipated reward is that when someone looks at your title and thumbnail, they have some expectation of what video is going to come up. If they've never seen you before, it's purely built on the title and thumbnail. And when you understand that, you'll understand that actually certain titles and thumbnails are psychologically appealing to people on a deep level. So the story actually starts from that title and thumbnail because the title and thumbnail builds an expectation of what the video is going to be about for the viewer, even in that split second before they watch the video. Understanding that, the first part of fulfilling that anticipated reward is to keep the anticipation, which is to reaffirm the click. What I mean by that is that, someone clicks on a video and they want to know pretty quickly, usually within the first 7 seconds, that the video that they're about to watch is related to the topic that they think is in their mind, the potential reward of this video for continuing to watch it. Then later on in the video, you might do something like foreshadowing, where it's like, okay, like if you keep on watching this video, then here's an anticipated reward for later that might come out, and then that will be something that keeps people's retention in like a longer term sense. So you won't necessarily see it in terms of a sudden flatness or whatever, but like the actual retention curve hopefully should start to level out a little bit if you do stuff like foreshadowing. So this video is going to be about how to interpret retention graphs, and this is a really important skill because if you can diagnose what's happening with your retention, well, you can improve your retention. But there's a lot of different patterns which are quite interesting with retention that I think need to be properly discussed and properly learned, because I think that people might misinterpret the retention graphs and therefore make the wrong conclusions about the graphs. I'm going to try to explain how I think about retention graphs. This is not going to be how everyone else does it necessarily. This makes sense to me. Here, I borrowed Alex Lucky's retention graph from Matthew Beam one to show you what a very, very good retention graph looks like. The reason I've not shown you mine is because the best retention graphs I've got are from clients that I've worked with rather than my own videos. And you can see that it's a very, very flat graph. Like it has this sort of steep drop at the start, which everyone does. And then there's always a point where that sharp drop will start to level off, and for them that's it, which is quite good. You can obviously see this sort of grayish area here, and that represents what the average of your retention graphs are going to look like. Like little things here are called spikes, and spikes are bits where people will go back and rewatch part of a video. To be perfectly honest, for spikes, I personally don't pay that much attention to them. The way I interpret spikes is that spikes are something where viewers have gone past a segment and they've returned to watch that segment again, or they've skipped forward to that segment. So for example, if you're a tutorial video where you've got like lots of chapters, then you always almost get a spike at the timestamps of those chapters too. I personally don't think spikes are that important, because it's kind of like, well, if someone's rewatching a certain bit, that certain bit might be just because that's like a once in a lifetime sort of thing for that particular video. Maybe it is interesting if it's like some sort of massive payoff or something, but for the most part, I just kind of ignore spikes, because what I really think is really important is flats. And it's where you've got these segments where people are just generally not moving off the video. Those segments, for example, there's one here, there's one here. Those segments are the ones that are really keeping 100% of the people that are watching at that particular time. So you're doing something really right for those segments in terms of building up the anticipation, using the right amount of humor. But for the most part, you'll probably find that the majority of your video is going to be on a slight decline. Let me just draw that there for you. So it's kind of like a slight decline there, and that's fine. Just try to reduce that decline as much as possible. And the flatter the curve is, the better your video is in terms of retention and possibly emotion as well. Because if people get bored or they feel negative or they don't like your video, then they'll also like exit off the video, right? You do have dips, like for example, let me just get rid of these. You can zoom in here and see that this is like a pretty subtle dip, just going down there. Let me point it out a bit better. So in between where those those lines are, that is the dip there. The dips can occur for a few reasons. I've talked about segmentation loss in the other retention dips video, but for example, if you just have an end of a segment, then you might actually get that dip. So it may not necessarily be the worst thing because segmentation loss is like pretty much impossible for any creator to avoid, but you can try to bridge it, of course, as well. I think that dips are really important to pay attention to because they do actually indicate things where something might have gone wrong in a video. Now, the really important thing about dips though, and this is something that people I don't think conceptualize as much. So like I've just got a blank retention graph, which is a Photoshop version of an actual retention graph. If you have, say, the segment like flattens out a bit, which is good, and then you've got like a flat segment, which is great, and then you've got a slight dip here, right? And you don't know what's going on with your segment, the rest of the video is whatever, fine. You might think that this specific moment is the one to focus on for your dip, but what you actually really need to pay attention to is what's happened all the way in that arc. This is a concept from In the Blink of an Eye. This book, they didn't actually even talk about retention graphs, but it's the concept of referred pain. Referred pain is this idea that in the context of YouTube, if you have a dip at a certain section, it doesn't mean that the thing right before the dip necessarily caused that dip. You might have just finished off a section and the payoff was good, but the dip is still there and people are still leaving. So does that mean that they didn't like the payoff? The real answer is that you have to pay attention to the referred stuff before, because actually everything before might have contributed to that particular dip. Getting people started and keeping people interested is a different story. So people might be like, oh, like this is an interesting segment and whatever, like it's kind of cool, and they'll get to the payoff and they'll be like, oh yeah, cool, great, now I can leave, because the hook was interesting enough and the payoff was interesting enough. But the segment in the middle, like if that's mediocre, then people will actually dip at the end of the segment, not necessarily during the segment itself. So that's referred pain. And the thing is, you've got to really macro that out and think like, okay, like is it just that particular segment, or is it like something that happened way before, like up here, for example, that now means that it's affected this dip over here. Maybe a specific example of that was if you're talking about a video and you started the video talking off about like, this is how you earn like $100,000 in 10 days. And then here it's like, we were only going to earn $10,000 or something. It's not because you've said you're only going to earn $10,000. It's because you set up the expectation of earning $100,000 right at the beginning of the video, and then people are like, hey, this is not the video I came for. Whereas if you just started by being honest, then you'll probably be okay. That's like an ultra specific example, but you really got to think about like, is there something wrong with the video? Is there something with the audio? Is there something wrong with the plot line, the characters? Like what has both appeared to make this dip, which is like a positive reason for why dip may occur. So for example, you've added a sound effect that's like horrible, or you've just made a bad joke. Those are like positive reasons in the sense that they exist, right? Or what's a negative reason why the dip does occur? In other words, what is missing from my video to cause this dip? Think about what's absent and what's like missing and what's too much of something, because both of those can be reasons for the dip. More than just dips, I actually really do think about the gradients more too, because I think that gradients are actually more telling in a lot of ways. So when I say gradients in a video, for the most part, like your graph kind of just look like this. The idea is that you want it to sort of look a bit flatter and flatter, and if you're like crazy, like really flat, that would be like the most ideal video. So sometimes when you're measuring between scenes, you don't actually get a dip because the scene that you've executed is so good, or at least like it's YouTube optimized enough that dips are not like a big problem for you anymore, unless you do a sponsorship, in which case your dip will literally look like choo as soon as you do a sponsorship. But apart from that, dips may not be a problem for you anymore. So this is where I start to look at gradients instead. We'll bring back the Alex the Lucky graph, right? I'll tell you that whatever's here between this scene and this scene is going very, very well. That's like a really, really good flat, and it doesn't dip at the end. It actually spikes at the end. Whatever this scene is like really baller. However, between this part of the graph and here, you can see that it's starting to go down a little bit. You're going to calculate the Y here, and that can be pixels, and then this is going to be the X. This is if you're doing it on like Photoshop or something. You can actually download the retention graph as well, which makes this probably a fair bit easier. Okay, like let's say it's moved like 3% down or something, and then the X is over a course of a minute or so, so maybe 60 seconds. 3 over 60 is our loss there, which is the equivalent of 0.05. So you can say that, okay, like this section is like 0.05. If you had like this segment that was like really steep, like let's say from here to here, and then maybe this like percentage is like 20% instead going down, and then over the same like minute or so, that would be 0.33. This is like obviously would be a much more significant dip than this one over here, right? And then therefore you can like do it even like subtly to measure differences between gradients and therefore differences between scenes. You can see like even on this retention graph, it's actually going to be a lot more subtle than that. For example, if you were to go from here down to, it might literally be like 4% difference instead for that same minute. I'm just like making up numbers here to illustrate it. But like this is how you can tell the strength of a different segment. To keep it simple, you have a scene that's flat, is good. Less flat, then that's less good. And so you can compare scenes like that. This is basically what I'm trying to say. You can do that with maths, you can do that with an Excel spreadsheet of the retention data, but I find that that's actually much more useful than looking at spikes and dips necessarily. Dips are very good for figuring out little things or like individual events, but the overall feeling of the scene, the overall retention of a scene, you'd actually want to use gradients instead, because the steeper the gradient, the worse it is. Now, this is a really, really important thing to talk about with graphs, is that graphs are dynamic. They actually change, or the retention graph changes with more views. When you're starting off, your graph is always going to look probably the best it will ever look, because it's all your subscribers watching. In other words, it's the people that YouTube kind of already knows like your content and have subscribed to your content and stuff that are watching it. So your retention graph will actually look like a lot higher to start off with, right? May not always if it's not a good video, but generally speaking, your retention graph as time goes on actually goes down over time. The reason is that as YouTube is showing more and more people your videos, then the AVD is going to decrease for those videos. So what might be a graph that started off like this may actually end up being a graph that goes down to like here or something. The thing is with those graphs, regards to spikes and dips, those are still relevant. So if you get a spike here, it's probably going to be here as well. Dips will also be relevant. So they'll still like be there regardless of whether the graph changes or not. The different gradients will probably be exacerbated a little bit more. So for example, here, it's like you can't really tell the difference between here and here, but here you can definitely tell the difference between this bit and this bit, or down here, for example, where it's probably going to be a bit flatter as time goes on. So relatively speaking, the graph will be consistent with like how views behave and stuff. So you can always like look at a graph within the context of an individual graph itself. But the trouble is if you go to compare graphs between videos and one video has like 20k views and then the other video has 1 million views, the video with 1 million views is probably going to have a much shittier looking graph. And it's just because YouTube has been pushing your video out to more people, and so the number of people who are likely to go and watch the entire video like decreases. So when you see stuff like these graphs where like 85% of viewers are watching at 0.30, or like even Mr. Beast one where it will sometimes see like 70% of viewers are still watching around 0.30, that's extraordinarily like remarkable. Out of the 50 million views or whatever, they still kept up the retention that high for those 50 million people. So what I'm really trying to say is, if you feel like your graph isn't the best, but your views are still getting a lot, don't be like, oh no, therefore graphs don't matter, or like therefore like retention is a myth. It's not a myth. It's just because that's just the dynamics of how graphs work. And the more views you get, the worse your graphs will look. But it's fine. Like within itself, it's still a very valuable tool for realizing, hey, these sections, there's definitely a difference between these sections. So I'm gonna pay attention to this section that's dipping a bit more steeply. One last thing before I go on retention graphs is sponsorships. Just look at that. That's just typical. If you're just doing straight up sponsorship without doing the integrated sponsorships, if you do integrated sponsorships, it looks a bit better. It will look like that and still dip a little bit, but be fine. But if you're doing like a straight up sponsorship, you get this valley of sponsorship despair. The other thing is that as soon as you prematurely end your video, this happens. Like it always will go like this. Basically, this is the bit where people feel like the video is ending. You might be like, thank you for watching this video. I hope you had a good time. And if you want to check out the next one, like that's when everything starts to really go down, right? So you really got to avoid long drawn endings. Be like, And if you want to watch the next video, these are another 10 productivity tips that you can use and you won't get that dip. But if you do get like a dip at the very end of a video, you can try to avoid it. That's how to interpret retention graphs. Retention graphs are actually very simple. And the last thing, there's a thing called relative retention graphs. No one I know uses it. If you disagree, please let me know, because I'd love to hear the rationale for the disagreement. But no strategist I know uses the relative retention graph for anything whatsoever. It might make you feel good because it will say like above average for certain bits of retention. When it comes to the actual video's performance, it really does not have an impact, because I've definitely myself had videos where there's like above average retention for like most of it, and it still like perform badly. So it means nothing. And with that note, that's the end of this video. In this part of the video, I want to talk about mastering payoffs. It's really important to master payoffs because the whole reason that your viewer came to your video in the first place is because they're seeking some sort of emotional reward from it, even if they don't necessarily put it that way, but that's why people watch videos. There's different kinds of payoffs, and then the places that you put those payoffs, you can think of payoffs as being micro payoffs in the context of micro arcs of the video, or you can think about the big macro payoff in terms of like the big part of the video. Making sure that you space these out in the actual video itself is really important. If you have like a long time in a video without a payoff or without rising tension, then a video can feel very, very arduous. It's actually really funny because you'll find some Facebook videos where they just optimize purely for AVD but not satisfaction. They just like literally have like the wife is about to be caught by the husband is about to be caught by his wife, and like the husband is like clearly cheating like behind, and then it goes on for like 20 minutes. This is a 20-minute long video, and then the husband never gets caught until the very, very end of the video, right? But that's not very satisfying for people, because people actually do have to have like something that makes them feel good in the actual video itself, and the frequency at which you do it is actually kind of important. It's a tricky balance, and it's a very sort of subjective balance, but I think if you're thinking about how you can make this video really rewarding for someone, then that's a really, really good thing to think about. In the hook, you might think about rewarding people very, very quickly. So I'm going to show you this Mr. Beast hydraulic press video to show you the speed at which someone gets a payoff.
We're about to test things that no one has ever tested before, like flattening a Lamborghini with a hydraulic press, climbing a building with a real Spider-Man suit, the world's largest elephant toothpaste experiment, filling a pool with 1 billion Orbeez, and more.
So these aren't payoffs, these are just anticipation, 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 layering on top of each other. So this is a multi-hook, but I talked about that in another video.
To kick things off, we're gonna see if that brick wall can stop this train. This wall is 20 feet tall and 3 feet thick. It's not going down easy. Give the orders. Large cheese.
If you've got a payoff, you almost have to illustrate the scale of what's come right before the payoff. In this particular case, the scale is a bit different. Like, I'm not talking about big or small, but about the significance of the payoff. So here, you've got a pretty big payoff in the sense that the wall is a very, very thick brick wall, and it's visually thick. It's made out of bricks, obviously, which are traditionally something that you associate with a very, very hard object, right? Like, if it was just a wall full of pillows, it wouldn't be anywhere near as good. And visually emphasizing that and making sure that you got something that's easily understandable to people is something that can make the payoff really good, because if someone doesn't understand the payoff or doesn't understand what's happened, then that's not going to be a good payoff.
I hate you. Send the train. Train us. The train's coming.
And this is a very literal anticipation to journey to destination thing.
Stop the train. Oh my god. Oh my god.
And it's not just about the fact that the brick wall got destroyed, which is, you know, a satisfying conclusion to this particular arc, but it's also people's reactions. If you just have yourself as a YouTuber reacting to stuff, that's cool because that's pretty organic and that's a good way to do payoffs. But, you know, getting other people's reactions as well, to have multiple people being like, oh my god, like, that's always like really funny too. Here's a video of Michael Reeves, for example, and this is in the video teaching a robot dog to pee beer. He's going to use his friend Scar's reaction. Obviously, making the robot dog is kind of this big journey in itself, but the big payoff is that the dog actually works.
Bum, 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 bum. Robot dog. Fuck? You can be wherever you want, right? That's the magic of it. You put
so anticipation here.
And you just back away.
No way.
And then a surprise.
Oh my! Wait! Oh my!
Oh! Do it again. Do it again. Oh no, the tank pressure.
That's the sort of feeling that you're wanting to pay off. You want that feeling of, it's like this combination of like surprise and almost like, holy shit, like something just happened. That's like really incredible. Obviously, payoffs don't necessarily have to be this extreme. I mean, you know, you just saw a train demolishing a wall and you just saw a robot dog peeing beer. Even in Ryan Trahan's I Survived on a Penny for 30 Days, this hook is very, very, very tight. Well, let me show you.
This is a penny, and I'm going to use it across America in the next 30 days. Here's the rules. Rule number 1, all profit must come from the penny. Hey y'all, can anyone sell me a pen for this penny? You just started a revolution. Rule number 2.
All right, so in the first 12 seconds, you've already got your first payoff and your first little bit of progression. And you can see it comes very quick.
All grub, boarding, and transportation must come from the profit from the penny. Hey, you guys want to buy this pen for $1? Thank you so much.
A little, obviously, change down there and a little bit of progress there in the top and the bottom left corner to illustrate that progression. Again, going back to the science of fun. The science of fun is that you have stress and then you increase that stress until you defeat the enemy. You have relief after that, and then you have growth and progress.
Thank you guys. Take care. Rule number 3, I only have 30 days to deliver Mr. Beast this penny because they're going extinct next year and there's no way he has one.
Okay, this is more talking about stakes and stuff now, so I won't go into that. But you can see why someone who's watching this video would get that immediate sense of satisfaction, because it's just like, okay, complete, and then going on to the next thing. Having lots of payoffs near the start can be really important for keeping people's interest early. But of course, as the video goes on, like, you don't have to keep on going like fast payoffs, because that's not necessarily going to be very fulfilling. I mean, this is YouTube, not TikTok, right? What you'd actually want is you want to have some bigger arcs, ideally, in like a really ideal story. In Ryan Trahan's 30 Days penny series video, like the big gigantic payoff is after the 30th video or so, then he's delivered the penny to Mr. Beast, which is a huge deal, right? The more effort that goes in between, I don't know if there's a word for it, when you spend a lot of effort on something and that effort is what gets respected or what feels like a big payoff for people. And it probably goes back to thinking about the original reason why stories exist, which is that as pieces of information, they are things that help people learn how to live and how to survive in this world, like things that take a huge amount of effort, shortcut in a story to figuring that out. You know, if someone spent 10 years of their life working out the cure to something, for example, like that's going to be a very interesting talk. Or if someone, or in this case, if Ryan spent 30 days trying to figure out how to deliver this penny to Mr. Beast and going through all his trials and tribulations, then the end of that is going to be very big and fantastic in people's minds too. Here's another example just exactly of that concept of I spent 200 days creating Gojo live action, and I won't go through the whole video, but
I just spent 200 days transforming myself into the strongest sorcerer, Gojo Satoru. Now my
he's actually like introduced the fact that he did it at the end, so you're going to stick around probably to the end to watch it.
This video is just to be what Gojo is, the best, and to make the best video.
And he actually did blur out some of the video, which I don't agree with in terms of foreshadowing, but I think it's fine.
I'm going to need the best.
I mean, this video has 1.4 million views in 2 weeks. For he definitely wasn't at 81k subscribers when I first saw this video.
Cosplay. Now, I'm no stranger to good cosplay. On my last video, I spared no expenses when it came to...
Anyway, so this video is like 7 minutes of just him basically coming across lots of tricky parts and trying to figure out, like, you know, showing around the effort that's required in making this. And then the actual payoff is a really long payoff because it's actually the entire sequence of him doing it, which is like super duper impressive. Like this, it ends up being this.
その汚れをみそぎ払え。さて、このまま行かせるとでも。残るはあいつか。仕方ない。少し乱暴しようか。術式反転赤
Explosion is always the biggest nice payoff. That took a lot of effort, and then that's why that payoff is like so grand and so big, showing the effort of like, oh, it took this much effort to do the shoes, for example. Shoes mentioned before, and then impact frame where the shoes come up, like that's good. So that's how it works. You may not be in a spectacle niche, you may be in the educational niche, and you might be wondering, well, how do I make, like, payoffs are good and all when you've got some sort of challenge or some sort of game, and then that leads to the end of it, but what do I do if I'm trying to educate someone? Productivity education traditionally, maybe in the past, 1 or 2 years, has been very like, okay, here's tip number 1, here's tip number 2. It's very upfront. So like often it will be like, hey.
Tip number 1 is that we absolutely own all of our time. Now, this is like a big one. When I first had this realization, my life genuinely changed because I used to think I don't have time to do stuff. And I don't know where I read it, but I came across this probably like a fortune cookie somewhere, which said something like,
The traditional model has been, here is a piece of information and here's another piece of information, and it's just like chunking like big listable articles, right? Which is kind of like, it's not bad for education, but the problem is that the retention is not necessarily going to be very good for that, because people don't necessarily need to wait to the end of your segment to get the payoff. So it's almost like you've given the payoff first and then you've given like some explainer, and the explainer is like a bit of education. It is another way to do payoffs in the sense for education, but it's not very retention optimized.
The process. So I have a 6-step process, of which the very first step is called broadening the context. And what I will be doing here is placing this topic in a broader context in the world and in my brain for it to make sense.
This is kind of interesting because even if, I'm not sure if this is deliberate or not, but like, although she's been Elizabeth Phillips, which this video has got 2 million views in 10 months, although she's been upfront with it, but you still like don't quite understand what it is exactly that she's trying to say. And so you have to almost wait to the end of what she's said to hear like, context broadening in terms of how to easily learn difficult things is like how she gives the examples and stuff is really, really the payoff. And so the entire segment is like quite educational. So it's a little bit better from a retention perspective. You can sort of get away with educational storytelling if there's also something else going on in parallel. I just saw today with Veritasium. This is interesting. Explaining concrete while getting buried in it. This is actually a fascinating way to merge these two things of like, I want to educate people on stuff, but at the same time, I also want them to anticipate something that's going to happen in the future. And this is brilliant. This is only released 11 hours ago.
I am about to get buried in concrete.
Which is intrinsically interesting.
And while that's happening, I'm going to explain everything you need to know about this substance.
Which is educational, so people get that merge, almost spectacle and education. And I think that that's a really, really cool way to do educational type stuff, to do in terms of retention and storytelling, specifically because of this reversal of payoff is here at the start and then educational explainer is at the end, when you really want to hold the payoff to the end. And I think if you look at someone like maybe a Film Booth, you can see that this works out for him really well in terms of like retention. He's an educational YouTuber that talks about YouTube specifically. Try to understand where the payoff is, and then you'll get a good feeling of like, he's actually withholding the payoff until this particular segment. So I'm just going to play it to show you.
I recently went to launch a new YouTube channel, and just before I hit publish on the first video, I realized this is f***ing terrifying. Nobody's going to listen to you, and it will never work out for you. Never does. You loser. 2 months later, the channel was still empty, and the stress of not pulling the trigger.
Problem, stress.
Big time. Ed, this is ridiculous. You know that gin tastes better in your oats than Guinness.
Humor.
Also, you jump straight into making videos, you fool. That's always going to end in disaster, because there's 3 things you need to do before you start, and not having them will ensure you never post. So in this video, I'm going to show you what those 3 things are, as well as the thing Beyonce would.
So you can see he's already 40 seconds. There's been 0 payoffs for this educational video. From a retention perspective, you can definitely withhold the information until the end of each individual segment.
And at the end of this video, we're going to then launch Drunk Ed's channel live. No, not live. It's live to us.
And there's a lot of humor to break up like the fact that there's no actual satisfying reward that's happened.
This is a recording to them. Live. No. Alright. So let's start with the first of our 3 key channel launch thingamajiggies. And in order to explain, I need...
See, where another YouTuber who's doing education might be like, number 1 is to do your research or something, or like study other channels before you dive into your own channel, right? Another YouTuber might say it like that, but what Ed's done, he's been like, before we go into number 1,
and in order to explain, I need to introduce you to 2.3 million kilometers of sand, which I'm going to leave Ed in now without.
So still no payoff, just wondering,
Bye, Ed.
You're wondering why is he in sand?
Bye.
So we've got unresolved questions.
The reason I left him behind is because of this. If someone left you in the desert to survive, what do you think your main objective might be? I'd say there'd be 3
And so you're really just wondering, like, what is the point that he's trying to make?
things in this order. Survive, find water, and find food. Starting a YouTube channel is like surviving in the desert.
So more problems, more unresolved questions. Why is he in the desert?
And keep posting them. You have to have a lot of motivation because it's so flipping scary. And we don't like to face our fears. But how the heck do you get motivated? Well, it's actually quite simple. You just need a goal that you're so excited about not hitting.
He actually sort of gave the payoff by saying, essentially, you have to get motivated, right? But like immediately, the transition from you have to get motivated, like, it is not even really put forward that much as like a discrete point, although like it sort of is, but there's no subtitle, there's no like big tip number 1, get motivated, blah 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 blah. Like it's actually like you have to get motivated, but how do you get motivated? Like it's like almost like before you even finish processing the actual learning point, he's introduced another question that's unresolved, and now you have to wait till that question gets resolved.
Well, it's actually quite simple. You just need a goal that you're so excited about not hitting it would feel as severe as not finding water in the desert. So to get myself motivated for my new channel, I wrote down what that goal was, and when I looked at it, I suddenly started to feel excited to post my bank of videos. In fact, let me share it with you. Oh, and for those of you who...
So here's another thing, it's like, oh, like I'm going to share with you this goal, but this goal is not resolved yet. What is the goal?
This video where I moaned about needing time off to reevaluate my mission. and I just want to make good videos. This channel was the solution I came up with. Anyway, here's my new channel goal.
Anyway, it goes on like this, and that's a fine way to do educational storytelling as well. You'll certainly get better retention, which would probably lead to more views at the expense of perhaps not being the most satisfying for viewers, because instead of like learning a lot of things, they have to wait like a long time in the video to actually get the information, right? In terms of educational payoffs, I actually find that there's one more thing that I think is really, really good. And I personally think that this is my favorite style of educational storytelling. It's where like the pace of the education and the actual interestingness of the education itself is so good that the payoff is almost like the entire process of watching everything going along. To show you that, I'll show you one of Fireship's videos. Fireship actually talks about code, and making code interesting is a feat in itself, right? Okay, let's say the build a mind-blowing free portfolio website, right? This will do pretty well.
The most visually mind-blowing websites in the world all seem to follow a similar pattern. They use 3D animations that bring the content to life when the page is scrolled. A website like mav.farm doesn't have a scroll bar, but instead animates a whole 3D world as you scroll through the page. This may look impossibly difficult, but in today's video, you'll learn how to create your own 3D animations with JavaScript using Three.js. By the end of this video, you will have built a personal portfolio website that's so impressive it's guaranteed to get you a job or your money back. And you might be shocked at how easy it really is when you understand a few concepts related to cameras, lighting, and geometry. This tutorial is beginner friendly, and I'll assume you're brand new to Three.js and 3D graphics in general. What we'll build today is a website that uses CS.
Okay, so this is a very interesting hook, right? The promise is if you watch this entire video, you're going to build a 3D website, which is great for 15 minutes. That's an awesome trade-off for 15 minutes of your time, right? But if you look at, like, this is a boring bit, right? Project setup. So I'm curious to see how he actually does this, but if it's Fireship, he'll do a good job.
Then open up VS Code to an empty directory and open up a terminal session. We'll build this project with plain old vanilla JS, and you can find the source code on GitHub or Fireship.io. First, we need to initialize a project.
So the first thing is that even though he's talking about code, right, he's actually got JS, this big visual, Vite, this big visual, like, and there's like a bit of visual dynamics happening while he's explaining things that like really reinforces the point of what he's trying to say.
We can handle dependencies, and to do that, we'll use a tool called Vite. Create a new project by running npm init vitejs/app. Running this command will give us the option to select vanilla.js, which will initialize a new project with a main.js file and a package.
What you can see is like, although these steps actually, there's a lot more time in between them, right? The way he's presented it is like step, 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 like progress, 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 progress. There's almost like no space for there to be empty time or just people like waiting for something to happen. It's kind of just like, if you're someone that does coding, for example, this is very satisfying because you feel like you're making this progression, right? Just like in any good plot and story.
JSON where we can install dependencies. From there, install Three.js by running npm install 3. And after that's done, we'll run the npm run dev command to serve our app locally. That should serve the app on localhost 3000, but then let's go into the style CSS and main.js file and delete all of the boilerplate code. If you look at my project files, you'll notice that I have a few images here. You can grab these images from the GitHub repo. However,
I find that this is probably one of the best ways to do storytelling, is that there's no fluff you can see that there's a very sort of tangible progress towards something being made. Because as people learn each new thing after thing after thing, that itself can be a payoff. You know, the joy of learning is like an actual thing. I'm recording this in 2023, but I hope to adopt some of these practices in my own videos, and hopefully these have been useful for you too. All right, I'll be talking about something else. Let's move on to the next video. In this lesson, I'm going to be talking about the science of fun, and this is a super duper important concept for people to know about, because I don't think anyone's ever talked about it. People have this vague semblance, or YouTubers have this vague semblance of, oh, this video is good. Like, what is the underlying principle behind what makes that feeling of like, this feels like a really fun thing? If you were to break it down, actually, Masahiro Sakurai, the creator of the Smash Bros series, talks a lot about what is it that makes a video game fun. This video here, Do We Really Need Enemies, basically explains that in 3 minutes, but I actually want to show you a video and try to explain the concept, the science behind fun. So the feeling of fun actually comes from 4 different things that happen sequentially. First, you have stress. Think about a video game like Super Mario Bros, for example. You're trying to conquer the level, you're trying to jump over different obstacles, and once you finish the level, then you feel like, yay, I'm done. If you think about fun from a video game perspective, you start off with the initial stress, because it's the stress and then later on the relief that comes after that stress, which is the second component that makes something feel like, oh, I've achieved this thing, or this thing was great, you know, this outcome was great. So if you think about any action movie that you've ever watched that was interesting, actually it has a large amount of stress right up to the victory of that particular action movie. Later on, I'll talk about the Kiisho Tenketsu model from Araraki, who wrote JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. But now, I just want you to keep in mind that stress leading to relief is the first aspect of fun. It's not nice to just have stress and then relief and stress and then relief, because if you have a character, for example, that's doing 100 fights and they're all very difficult, right? But they're all kind of the same and against the same enemy, then that feels boring. So the next part of this stress relief thing is that you actually need growth and progress. And so the growth is, you know, the acquisition of like skills or, you know, something new that's happened, and the progress is that, you know, you're moving on with your life basically and becoming a better person as a result of the obstacle that's been faced. To illustrate this much more concretely, here's him doing the hardest Mario level of all time, and we're starting off with the premise that, wow, this is going to be a super hard level.
Let's check this. Okay.
So what he's done there is done like an immediate surprise, and that surprise is like, oh my gosh, that's gonna like shock people initially, right? But this is not that fun at the moment. It's just the surprise itself is kind of like this, oh, sudden stress, and then like slight relief.
All right. Now what if I say that? Okay. All right. Yep.
Here you've had a bit of stress, and you know, I guess he's died. Not quite a relief exactly. Not very fun at the moment. Now, if I was to go to the very last, like the climax of this video to really illustrate this, right? What you're gonna see, the stress is increasing and increasing, and it's to the point where it's like, I can't believe how much stress and tension is being caused. And then when the victory happens, you see for yourself.
I hate this so much. This is like if in the buzzsaw level you had to keep jumping through the buzzsaw over and over again. It's not good. I don't like this level. This is a bad level. It's not fun. You just die to it doesn't matter how much you practice it, you just die to some stupid thing every time. It's the dumbest level. I hate this. But wait a minute.
Okay, so you see that up until that point, there has been a little bit of stress. Not that much, because it's just sort of being commentary, right? But now he's like, wait a minute. And so this stress is now about to really build up. Okay, and so we start to talk about stakes and that sort of thing, because the stakes now become really high, because basically he's gone so far that if he loses, he has to start the whole level over again, right? You have to let people really feel that something is important, and here, you know the game. In other words, if he touches any of these fireballs, he's going to die immediately, right? So your stress is also increasing as you're watching this video. So I will be quiet for a moment to let you observe.
Oh, now I see the twist.
If you're watching this for the first time, that victory at the end is like, oh my god, like that's amazing. And actually this particular victory is compounded by the fact that, because I've skipped like 3 minutes of the video, right, where he just like kept on failing. So actually that stress and that feeling hardness of the obstacle really compounded. The signs are fun, stress, relief, growth. Now he's like become much better at the game, and then progress, he literally is going to the next level. But you might be thinking, all right, I get what you're trying to say. I get you trying to say that for games is good, but what about for my content? Well, actually you can apply it to any type of storytelling. Let's say that you're doing a travel vlog. If you have a mini story where you're trying to explore something, right, the stress might actually come up from you trying to find the actual thing itself rather than just immediately revealing the thing that you're exploring. You know, so you actually might play around with people's like tension. An example of the way that we did this in the Capsule Hotel video, for the robot scene, initially Drew was going to open with, today I'm going to go to the robot cafe in Tokyo, and like it's a very futuristic cafe, and and that was how the opening for that scene started. But actually I was like, I think what you should do is you should say, I'm going to go to the most futuristic cafe in Tokyo, and then have the train ride play out, and then have people be like, okay, what is that? And so that creates like this sort of tension of, I don't know what that is. The reveal is the actual robots themselves, right? And then that's like oh wow, that makes people feel like it's a really good like segment. And certainly we did get a lot of comments that were just like, oh my god, that robot cafe was amazing and stuff. Let's say that if you're not doing travel vlogging or spectacle, maybe you're doing something like an educational piece, right, or a video essay or documentary. Then the tension might be like, why did Jeremy, who was only 7 years old, kill his parents? Like, and it's like, whoa, what the hell? Like, that's a really stressful thing. You want that tension to be resolved. You don't want to just be like, all right, yeah, I guess he did, and then you leave the video. No normal person would not stick around for the next sentence of that particular thing, right? And then the relief comes with, like this is like the reason. So like the longer you can tease that, then people are going to stick around for the payoff, basically. If that stress like sort of goes up initially, it's like, oh my god, he did what? And then like you have a super long documentary that goes for 10 minutes and doesn't really go anywhere, then people's stress sort of goes down, and like, you know, without the actual payoff happening and without the explanation being given, people get bored. So that's why the stress part, like increasing stress, is really important to make that payoff or that relief better. I've talked in the abstract sense about how to increase stress, but how do you actually do it in a video? Well, you can do it by, you know, making things really close, making things really fast, making things really high in amplitude or really dangerous. So for example, you know, if someone's going to fall off like a 100 kilometer cliff, right, that's certainly going to be more stressful than, they just fell off a trampoline. I think for the purposes of YouTube, just think about how you can make a scene more intense, and then that will just generally get you in the right direction of, this has become more stressful. And then technically speaking, the parameters of intensity are stuff like, frequency or rapidity, amplitude, how much it relates to stakes. But if you just want one simple concept, make it more intense, and then you'll make something more fun when that intensity is relieved. Okay, so here is a massive presentation about foreshadowing, and there's many aspects of foreshadowing. I'm actually going to blitz through this presentation because you can download it already, but I just wanted to create a brief spoken version of it. Foreshadowing is very important because remember that our original concept of retention, or my theory of retention, is retention equals anticipated reward times immediate emotion. And what foreshadowing does is focus hardcore on that anticipated reward bit. I think that foreshadowing done well really helps retention. When you think of foreshadowing, you may think of, I know, like high school English and films and stuff like that, but we're not talking about that sort of poetic foreshadowing, although you can do that, and that'd be really cool if someone did. But I'm going to talk about YouTube foreshadowing specifically. There's a few levels of foreshadowing. There's level 1 foreshadowing, which is my whole video. It's not hype, and I'll show you why it's not hype. There's level 2, which I think Mr. Beast does. He does a lot of front loading of the foreshadowing in the beginning, and there's Airac kind of foreshadowing, and I like that foreshadowing a lot. Let me show you. Anyway, so this is bad foreshadowing. I'm going to try to master 3D modeling in 1 week, and we're going to turn this grey cube into Paimon from Genshin Impact.
Paimon is not emergency food!
But the problem is, I've never done 3D modeling in my life before. Like, it's not bad. I think it was okay, but the inaccuracy there was, I think I could have definitely shown Paimon being more like actual 3D, being much closer to, rather than the in-game model, bring like some sort of semblance of like what the actual thing would look like. That would actually be much better in terms of foreshadowing. Because if you think about anticipated reward, people are like, okay, like if I'm just getting shown someone the B-roll clip of something, then it's not very interesting, right? Whereas they want to see, oh, if I stick around to this end of this video, then I will see this like amazing thing that's being made. I also like introduce a character or who doesn't mean anything to the viewer, so that's not very hype. I don't think I really emphasized how difficult this was because, you know, just saying I just did this in 1 week, it was almost like implied as to how difficult it was, even though I'd never done 3D modeling before. I should have done something like, oh my God, like, you know, usually it takes people months or years to learn 3D modeling to get to this level, and I'm going to try to compress it all in 1 week. Then that would be more interesting. Or I can be like, show like a huge diagram of stuff and be like, these are all the things I need to learn just to do this, and I'm going to get started right now. And that would be like kind of interesting too, right? And lastly, like I didn't really use an incredible 3D model. Like the spectacle is going to be the main draw, right? So if your spectacle itself is not attractive, then it's not necessarily going to keep people there. A 3D model of Palm 1 is cool, but it's not something that compels people. Whereas if I was like, I created the entirety of Super Mario 64 in 1 week in Unreal Engine, and this is what I did, then that would be like immediate. That's actually a really good topic. Maybe I should do that. But that would like be way more interesting, right? Because people like love the series Mario, but also the idea of creating a huge world is so much more like fascinating than like I created one character from one game. So there's a lot wrong with that foreshadowing, and please learn from my lessons. I wish I could have told all this to my past self, but that's okay. I'm telling you now. I like Mr. Beast's foreshadowing. So this is him doing it here in Mr. Beast Reacts.
Game of soccer, 100 kids or a pro athlete? A robot with a giant flaming hammer or a robot with a secret weapon? Robot battle!
So you can see that immediately, like it's more interesting, right? Because the concepts themselves are more interesting. This is front loaded in the hook of a video. So actually this is, maybe you can call it a hook, but you know, really it is foreshadowing because it's like, oh, this thing is going to happen in the future of this video rather than directly after the hook, for example. It's kind of like a level 2 foreshadowing. He foreshadows a lot of the rest of his videos in the very front of the video, and I think that's very good. And finally, we get to Eric foreshadowing, which is used throughout the video, and I think that there's really 3 types of foreshadowing that he does. He does A-roll foreshadowing, B-roll foreshadowing, and in-scene foreshadowing. Here in the Never Have I Ever video, every important scene in the video has been foreshadowed. For example, the initial setup, the boxing, the football, bull riding. Let me show you.
Never have I ever gone bull riding.
I've never gone bull riding.
So foreshadowing.
The video that you're about to watch was not supposed to come out. Like for you, it is coming out right now.
That is probably some of the best foreshadowing that I've seen in a video, because it's like, oh my God, like there's all these situations. They're all individually pretty crazy. They're visually very different. The foreshadowing that's done here, none of it is blurred. And this is something that a lot of people get wrong. I think that most YouTubers, when they sort of think about like, oh, like I want to save the mystery, right? You got to think about the whole idea of retention, which is anticipated reward times immediate motion, right? If you're blurring something out, that's going to reduce the anticipation for the potential reward, right? If, for example, like let's say intuitively, I gave you a piece of chocolate, and there's 2 ways I can give you a piece of chocolate. Either I can give you like the tiniest piece of chocolate ever, that's a sample of the real chocolate, but like tastes exactly as good. Or I can give you a chocolate lolly that's just mild and doesn't taste very good. It's big enough, right? But it's kind of mild in taste. And I give you that. I'm saying, yeah, this is like part of like this other chocolate, but we just reduced the flavor to only 20% of its original like flavor profile. In other words, you've got tiny chocolate at 100% flavor, or you've got very mild 10% flavor chocolate, but like 100% of that, then it's kind of obvious intuitively which one you're going to choose, right? If you're creating an anticipated reward, to increase the anticipation, you want to show people just a very quick taste of that reward, but not complete that question that's in their minds, because that is much stronger than giving people a mild version of the reward, which is the blurring. People can't visualize in their minds, like, to get past a blur. Like, they have to make extra cognitive effort to be like, what is behind that blur? What could possibly be behind that, right? But that's not a good kind of cognitive friction. It's different from curiosity, where it's like, oh my God, like there's something there. I need to figure out what that is. This choice where you've got, you know, the option to give someone curiosity versus the option to give someone something to brainstorm and fatigue themselves with. Obviously, you're going to choose the curiosity one. Therefore, it's always better to go for foreshadowing, which is not blurred.
Never have I ever gone bull riding.
I've never gone bull riding.
See? This doesn't reveal any of the entirety of any individual situation, it just reveals enough of like, oh damn, there's like a really good story here. Nothing's blurred out and it's really good. That's how you execute foreshadowing properly. If you do that, that's a really, really strong technique. Each clip is like a mini hook, and then like a hook, the effectiveness of foreshadowing is how interesting each individual story is. But sometimes you may actually have a reveal that you don't want to reveal for whatever reason, right? For those foreshadowings, you can actually use what I call B-roll foreshadowing. I don't think it's an official term because YouTube is so kind of new in terms of meta education, I suppose, that terms like this don't exist yet. So I want to stamp it right here. B-roll foreshadowing is where you're using B-roll that isn't the actual clip itself to illustrate the clip. I attempted to do this with Paimon in the 3D game, but it wasn't very effective. However, you can make it effective by using B-roll, where it's like it creates like an emotional feeling of just like, oh, like kind of like this B-roll.
Again, so. Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot to mention to these boys that we would be playing the baddest, most ruthless football team to ever walk the earth.
And I hate when you do that. You lock eyes with the camera and just go empty inside.
So
like never have I ever played against like these crazy footballers. That's the foreshadowing. Although what actually happens and shows you all this stuff.
College football. Another NFL team?
Foreshadowing, foreshadowing, foreshadowing. Subversion. Right? Your foreshadowing has been subverted and it's not actually like NFL players. You thought it was going to be like, and you were hyped up for them to get absolutely trashed by these NFL players, but actually it's just kids. So I think that that's what counts as B-roll foreshadowing, and even I guess technically B-roll foreshadowing plus subversion. The main thing about the B-roll foreshadowing is that you're trying to explain, like trying to get the feeling across of foreshadowing rather than using the actual clip itself. Another example would be like if there's a gigantic bike ramp, right, that you're going to attempt, instead of showing yourself in a small clip of you attempting that bike ramp, it's actually like a B-roll clip of someone else doing the bike ramp, and then the viewer being like, whoa, like that's the one who's gonna do. It's the less extreme things. And think about software, for example. It's like, wow, we're gonna try to create something that's like this particular website or whatever. From the old presentation, I kind of like this concept, which is that you can't make a cold audience laugh. If you have a comedian that's just punchlines, then, well, they don't have the punchline, because the thing is, you can't even detect the setup, right? It's just like joke after joke after joke. It's very meaningless. You gotta really increase the sense of tension for people. Foreshadowing is something that increases that sense of tension, so that when you get the payoff of the actual event happening and then done, that makes people feel better about it. People have this like undercurrent of expectation that is constant throughout your video, and how you're playing with that expectation of the video. Like if someone is like prepared to laugh, then when something funny crops up, like it'll be extra funny, right? But if someone is like not really, like they're kind of going through like the lecture and it's like boring, and then something really funny comes up, right? People can't just go from like bored to like, oh my god, that's so funny. Like people will go from bored and be like, ha, even if it's like the funniest joke in the world. To summarize with foreshadowing, think about A-roll foreshadowing. Sometimes you might put it in the start of the video, and that can be really good and part of the hook, but you might also tease that foreshadowing in other parts of the video. Don't do it too much. Sometimes, you know, the viewer doesn't need to be reminded for like the 16th time that, oh, this thing is coming up. Like they'll get it. And if they're already immersed by maybe minute 5 or 6 in the video, then it's kind of like you don't need to necessarily do that foreshadowing. So it's like, well, you know, the viewer already knows about it. They don't need to relearn it. It's almost like if you have to relearn something again and again and again, it's not very interesting, right? If the foreshadowing itself creates an emotional reaction in the viewer, then that's the best. In this video, I'm going to teach you a little bit about pacing. Pacing is very interesting, right? Because when you start off on YouTube, especially on the YouTube optimization things, it's very, very easy to go with super duper fast pacing. But super duper fast pacing is not necessarily good pacing at all. So the way to think about pacing is really in terms of people's cognitive load, and that pacing actually change, like the requirements of pacing change over the course of a video itself. Here is an interesting tweet that I've got here, which is timeline for Matthew Beam's latest video, I built a gaming room to hide from my sister. You can see that it has 85% retention at 0:30. I don't know how many views it had at that particular time, because that's obviously going to change the retention graph too. You can see that 85% for 0:30 is just generally a very, very good retention, right? You might think that Matthew Beam has increased his retention. Let me show you a comparison of these 3 videos to show you, like, at least for the start, like how retention can be thought of. At the very end of those 3 videos, I'm going to show you what this graph is. But to start off with, I want to show you my shitty little video, which is from 10 months ago, with only 317 views. And it's because like this pacing at the start is crazy. 3D modeling is the art of making 3D art, and with it, you can create characters, worlds, and it can look so realistic. Check out this animation. So the graph for that is not very good because it was actually kind of fast. Like it just felt like like there's a lot going on. When someone gets into this sort of video, if they kind of just want to chill out a little bit and they're having dinner, this is like a very intense video to come to, right? And if you look at some Matthew Beam's old videos,
in this video, I'm gonna be the first person to launch a Mr. Beast burger to space, but my friends have no idea.
So what are we doing this week, Matt?
I have a challenge for us. Whoever can get a Mr. Beast burger closest to the moon wins $1,000.
How are we gonna do that?
Time starts now, go. Matt, Amy!
What are we doing?
Where are you guys going?
like there is so much movement, so like many little plot things, so much going on. It's very, very, very taxing to start with this video. Compare this to this video now at 85% retention at 0:30, and this is what this video looks like.
Today I'm building a secret gaming room under my bed to hide from my sister. My sister doesn't realize it, but she always uses my room to play video games. So to build a hidden gaming room without her knowing, and today being her birthday, I'm sending her on a dream vacation.
Japan? Is this for real? Are you serious?
You guys are going to Japan in the next hour. You need to start packing your bags right now.
The equivalent plot point of like we need to go right now, like that happens at like 9 seconds, and then here it happens sort of just like at 16 seconds ish. Just like the feeling of it is like a lot slower. Part of that is because of the way the videography is done. In this Matthew Beam video here, he's opted for a lot of jump cuts as opposed to like swiveling cameras, camera dynamics and stuff. So here, zoom, fair enough. So jump cut with subtle zooms. Maybe there's a pan there, but like it feels like more comfy, right? As opposed to here, camera is very dynamic. Here you got this cut, like super zoom, like camera's like super panned, and it feels like very uncomfortable for the viewer.
Her on a dream vacation.
Japan? Is this for real? Are you serious?
You guys are going to Japan in the next hour. You need to start packing your bags right now. Let's go, come on!
And this is certainly still very fast.
We're gonna fly on this jet that costs $500,000 per flight. And we're also gonna fly on this $25,000 private jet, a $10,000 first class seat, a blimp, and so much.
It's almost like, for example, this Mr. Beast video, right? Like each sentence exists as like a little individual idea, and you want people to be able to register that idea in their minds, because if people feel like, oh my god, I'm getting so many ideas, I can't even keep up with what's going on for the video, then that pacing is too fast. The opposite problem is that pacing can be too slow, obviously. But if you're doing this, you're, for the most part, most people who are on this side of YouTube are doing YouTube optimization work, the pacing tends to be too fast rather than too slow. I won't point to anyone specific to say how slow someone's pacing is, because I feel like that's a bit mean. You should actually always get someone to like watch your videos with you as well, so you can see like their reactions and stuff. And if someone's like eyes like glazing over, it's too slow. It's actually a really good activity to do with your friend, loved one, with family, whatever. Just get someone to like watch a YouTube video with you, and you can see where they like their real life attention drops. The other thing about pacing is that as you go on for a video, so let's say that I'll go to the midway here, this fast pacing, if you're going to do it, you don't want to keep a whole video as ultra fast pacing, because that's not going to be very nice for people, right? So here, like, compare the start.
And you guys inspired me a little bit, so I brought some pizza.
This is my favorite plane because it has YouTube, but we didn't pop up first.
Like, so this pacing right in the middle of the video is much more casual. So when you get to the middle of the video, you can definitely like relax the pacing quite a lot. I think it's mainly the first 30 seconds that your pacing probably does have to be a bit faster than usual to keep people's retention and be like, there is a lot of stuff that I'm going to get from this video. So you feed that fairly quickly, not to the point where people feel tired. And then when someone's invested in your video, you can relax the pacing a bit, because but like it's not just relaxing the pacing, you want to actually alternate the pacing too, right? So some stuff should be slow and then some stuff should be fast, so that people's interest does keep maintained, and that sort of contraction and relaxation is something that will make people feel great. There's one other time where I think it's really cool to increase the pacing of something, and that is right before like a payoff or the climax or something. So if you've got the climax here, then your pacing ideally, like it should start off slower and then go up faster, because that creates more tension. And then once you've reached the peak, once you've got your payoff, the more tension there is here, and like the bigger the relief of that tension, then the better the payoff. I will show you an example from Blue Lock, because I think Blue Lock is a really, really good way to describe this, right? And this is maybe not just pacing, but this is just an explanation of that crescendoing tension. And so just pay attention to tension. So it's a bit slower at the start. Like this is almost quite slow actually. 30 seconds. Okay, something's shifted, pace is picking up a bit. Literally the pace is picking up with the music.
同じ目とノーミスを持ってる。だから自分でシュートを打つよりフィニッシュで大川にパスをする。俺の勝ちだニコ。最後の最後でパスを選んだお前はストライカー失格だ。
Okay, now everything's happening, so the pace is really increasing. So something's happening, movement's happening.
シュートじゃなくパスを選んで負けて後悔して泣いてた。あの時の俺はもういらない。勝ちたい。生まれ変わるのは今だ。
Okay. I don't know if you noticed, but actually even the music itself has subtly increased by maybe about 10 to 20 beats per minute. More happening, more visuals, more shots, more cuts. There's something very interesting there, which is like right at the moment before the payoff, there's like this very, very slight slowdown and then bang, and then you get the payoff. So that's a really anime specific thing. But like you can see the general trend is like the pace is like increasing right towards the payoff, which makes the payoff super duper good and super duper fun. Pacing and rhythm go hand in hand as well. So if you've got like 1, 2, 3, 4, then making it something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, like it feels more tense for sure, but it still doesn't feel that interesting. Right, there's really this interplay of rhythm. So instead of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, that would be like an interesting rhythm, but also combined with pacing. And in a video, the idea is that with that mix of pacing and rhythm, then you can create something more interesting. So like just to illustrate some boring rhythms to start off with, it might be like, and that's super boring. I can't even do it for like another 4 beats. It might be more interesting if it's like, and that's what you hear, funny enough, for a table tennis ball hitting the ground. But also, like when you hear like people at an arena cheering for a goal, they're like or whatever. Same idea. But really, getting the pacing rhythm combination, that's like the coolest, because that's when you really like play with people's minds and expectations. Or even like in humor, you might actually see, and this is also hard to characterize, but I think you can see this in Michael Reeves' videos quite a lot, right? Like he'll play around with the rhythm separately. So I might just include rhythm in this video too then. So check out this.
It's 4 a.m. We're going to TwitchCon, baby. So I'm going to TwitchCon to trash. Looks like I have to go all in a normal truck, and the most places with dumpsters and dump the trash. Flick. I came back from pissing. Luckily, it didn't matter because the engine was. Come on, you can make it. You can make it.
So let me show you like an example of rhythm done well here, right? Because like with rhythm, sometimes the subversion of rhythm or something unexpected is like really, if it's put in the right place, it can really make a joke hit hard. It can make a emotional moment feel much more emotional. But here I'm just going to show you a boring video by Michael Reeves. That's literally what it's called. It's number 46 in trending. It's got 4 million views in 4 days.
Let's fucking go!
1, 2.
Luckily, it didn't matter.
So see that how subtle that is, and he's just fixing his car, right? It's like da 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 da. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like
Luckily, it didn't matter.
Rhythm is quite hard to teach, but when you play around with that rhythm, then that can make a video feel so much better. Speaking of rhythm, there's another rule sometimes I apply to YouTubers called rule of threes. Generally speaking, by the time you go to the fourth thing of something, it's often the most boring version of that thing. So for example, you might have 3 parts of like an individual segment, which is fine. Like maybe you've entered a restaurant or something, right? And you're trying to showcase all the different things in this restaurant. You might want to show 3 things and then get out and move on to a different restaurant. Because if you show the 4th thing or the 5th thing or the 6th thing, there is a solid chance that by the 4th or 5th thing, it's very samey. And then also something that can lead to like a retention tip, but also just be less interesting. I do have examples of that, but I don't want to, again, rag on any specific creator. So if you just look at different vloggers, for example, and watch some of their non-retention optimized content, you'll see that the rhythm is kind of like, instead of doing 1, 2, 3, up, it's like this, then this, then this, then this, then this. Yeah, and you get bored. Well, that's probably enough about pacing. When I make more specific examples of pacing, I will maybe put it in a version 3 of the course. But for now, that's all I want to talk about with it. Thanks. So in this video, I want to tell you about context maps. And context maps are just a very simple way to get people to understand the progression of your video, because when people feel like the video is progressing, then that's when they feel like the video is worthwhile, because you have to give people that sense of progression, right? So context maps do 2 things. And what I mean by context maps is, in a video, you might see a literal map, like for example in this Mr. Beast video.
We're right behind him. Step on it. All right, guys, he's on the
where you can see people traveling along. So that's an example of a context map. And the reason for doing that is, 1, it provides progression, but 2, it provides clarity as to where people are. It's good for retention, I think. You know, you see a lot of people doing it, so I think that's a good sign. But if you don't have a video that's even necessarily you traveling somewhere, you can use something like a context map like this, right? Where you've got almost like a kind of foreshadowing for the rest of the video. And it's like, okay, we're going from one to the other, to the other, to the other. That can also provide people like a sense of progression, almost like a level select screen where the levels are grayed out and they become green as you like complete them, for example. Sometimes a context map doesn't necessarily have to be a map. Like in this Mr. Who's the Boss video, who's a tech YouTuber, he'll talk about like different things about who's winning in which category, right? And so that sets you up for being like, oh, like I actually kind of want to see like what the camera is all about. And so he set it up so that for every like section, a new box gets filled out, right? And that's a different kind of context mapping too. In the most simple sense, you might even just have like a counter on the side. Like this is 39 things. They didn't tell you about PlayStation. And then here it's got like 37, 38, and then it will go all the way to 1. So you can see that sense of progression, as well as how long each segment there's left to go, because chances are you'll probably stick around until the end of the segment, and by having anticipation of like when that end is coming, that can be really, really good. There's a few things with context mapping, not only just to help people feel a sense of progression, but also to manage their expectations. It's like, okay, like I can bring myself to wait this long for this potential payoff of this thing, or if not, then at least if I get through this section that I'm kind of finding a bit boring, I know there's other sections coming up which I'm actually really interested in. That's what you can do with context mapping. So welcome to this video about contrast, and this is going to be one of my favorite videos of the entire thing, because I'm so excited to talk about this. Contrast is one of the key ingredients to telling a good story. And I've got so many good examples, both from anime, from Ryan Trahan, from movies. Oh man, I'm so excited. If you can master this particular technique, then oh my gosh, you've just like unlocked so much with how you can tell a story. To understand what contrast is simple to look at things like light and dark, you know, black and white. Contrast gives shapes to things and gives shape to story. You can see that when you have black against white, then the shape is defined. And then when you have all sort of gradations of gray in between, oops, it's gray in between, then that's sort of like less contrast, right? Which makes things less interesting, less spiky. The reason for contrast, like having that there plays into some part of the brain, which is like, okay, this thing is different from this thing. And then your brain does this comparison in like microseconds and then registers that as like oh, this is a new like brain activity that I've got to activate or something. When you feel this like tension of contrast, it can really like make you feel different ways. And I think the best way to explain it is literally just to show you as many examples as I can, because it's very hard to explain. But just understand that contrast just means like there's a big discrepancy between two different things, whether that's big and small, light and dark, funny and sad. Every single thing that you can think of, if there's contrast, it can make things more powerful for people to understand. So I'm going to show you an anime one to start off with. Now, I want you to try to figure out the contrast in here, because I'm going to explain it a little bit. Now, Bocce the Rock is by far one of my favorite anime of all time, if not my favorite. And you might think, yeah, I just spotted one piece of contrast. But actually, I think there are probably about 5 pieces of contrast just within this one 30-second scene. And that's why this scene is so ridiculously powerful. Or at least, I felt it was very powerful. So first of all, you have this contrast of... First of all, this contrast of light and dark, right? You've got someone in the crowd and you've got this very light source, which is the band. You've got her contrasting the emotion of just like everyone else is kind of like, oh, what's going on? And then she's like really powering forward. So there's a contrast there, emotionally speaking. And then there's a contrast in that pacing of music there and the music that's chosen from like almost a lead up to bang, we're getting straight into it with this pacing. That little it's like another contrast. Oh, there's just like so much in this scene which makes it so powerful. To actually watch YouTubers use contrast is also pretty inspiring as well. I feel like animation is a very particular thing where there's a lot of deliberateness that you can create in your shots, right? But actually, even with YouTubers, there's a lot you can do with YouTubers and YouTuber shots. So for example, let's use I Built a Tiny Ecosystem by Ryan Trahan as an example again of contrast.
This is an atom. Oh, so cute, it's a little atom. Just kidding, it's the entirety of the known universe. Anyways, I find scale to be so interesting, and I have this dream of building a really tiny ecosystem that is basically self-sufficient and interacts with itself with living organisms all in the next 30 days. See,
the obvious contrast is between the entire of the known universe and this ecosystem. The reason for doing that is if you just started off with, here's like a beautiful ecosystem, right? It might actually be very boring because it's like plants and bugs, and if you're not interested in that sort of thing, kind of like, yeah, it's kind of cool, I guess, right? But by starting off with,
this is an atom. Oh, so cute, it's a little atom.
Very cute, very like, friendly, the music like and it's like just bang, kidding. Here's like something crazy going on and something like extremely epic.
The entirety of the known universe. Anyway.
And then maybe like a short lead in to go back to, oh damn, here's the reveal of like, this is like gentle and intricate and that sort of thing. That's where this contrast like creates that comparison. In order to understand the shape of a shadow, you have to see the light around it. Here's another example of Ryan, again using contrast to as the hook to immediately grab people's attention.
The metaverse. Ever heard of it? If not, click off of this video right now, run as far as you can, as fast as you can, and never click on this video ever again if you care about your life at all. But if you have, welcome! Here's a refresher. It's a one-to-one rep.
You've got this like extreme emotional contrast, you've got this dynamic contrast in pacing, you've got this contrast in volume, like literally, I don't know if you heard that, but that volume is like at least 10 decibels higher than the original starting volume. And then that whips people into be like, oh, like, yeah, okay, I gotta pay attention because there's a lot of change going on here. And I guess from a survival perspective, if you think about it, right, if you see like a rustling in the bushes, you see movement, and then you're like, oh shit, there's a tiger there, I better pay attention. So that movement is one thing. But similarly, if you see other changes in your environment, like let's say you saw a huge flash over there, then your eyes would be immediately drawn to that because like, oh shit, that's like some sort of explosion, right? Or that's some sort of big noise. Like your brain is just primed to pay attention to things that are really contrasting with everything else that's going on in a particular scene or in any part of your life. But there are other ways to do contrast, like symbolic contrast, for example. This is a really amazing film, which I highly recommend, called Everything Everywhere All at Once. So basically, she to explain this, she just travels between many different universes to gain skills, sort of, is like the simple explanation.
Pushing things too far. Not far enough. Oh my god! Oh my god! Come on.
I'll change this to here.
Oh my god.
What are you doing?
So here she is gaining all these skills by doing something weird to gain them. And the idea is there's a bunch of enemies outside and she has to defeat them. By in the different universes, she like did different professions or whatever, and so she's almost learned a skill from each of those universes, and she's going to use it here. Contrast number 1, this epic fight with this pretty gentle music and peaceful music. Contrast number 2, pace is going up. This. That pizza science scene is like so incredible to go between her in this world and then her in like another world, and the amount of creativity to contrast those two worlds with those situations is like amazing. The visual contrast is also very stark there, right? Like here you got this dark room and lots of smoke versus the outside world, and she's wearing something completely different. This pizza sign is yellow versus this riot shield, which is a big whatever the riot shield is, like this big hunk of metal essentially. And lastly, I want to give one last piece of contrast. I feel like there's something that's very entertaining about the contrast, but also really makes you feel something deeper than that, you know? It's like, wow, like this person in another life could have just been like this, and now they're applying their skills here. Like, that's very, very cool. This is the last one that I wanted to include.
Yeah. その選択も何もかも見透かしてリンは待ってる。でもこの密集が俺の狙い。全員が俺のパスに警戒する今、この一撃で戦況は一変する。さあ広大なスペースを駆け上がれチギリ、全速前進。スタミナ切れだろお嬢さん。そしてそのチギリからのパスをめぐって俺たちはゴール前に殺到する。この状況変化に俺だけが先を見して動き出せる。全員が進路を奪い合う中でリンの視界から完全に消え、一気に内へ。最短で俺はゴールのニアサイドへダイアゴナルラン。急ぎだけ斜めに突破した。さあ出せ、これが俺の思い描いたフィールドの未来だ。来た毒に決定機、俺のダイレクトシュートの絶対領域。リン、やっぱ嘘だろ。完璧に抜け出したのにキリ追いついてきやがった。シュートブロックの間合いダメだ。やっぱり俺じゃこいつに勝てない。てかかかったな天才。この瞬間俺を読み切って追いつけるお前だからこそ生まれる天才ゆえの資格。そしてここが俺の真のラストアクション。完全直撃バックギアショット。マジ救世主潔。食ったとリン、俺はお前を超えていく。
The emotional contrast of like, oh, it's so fiery, so ambitious, and you know, ready to shoot the goal, and then back to despair.
ダメだ。やっぱり俺じゃこいつに勝てない。てか?
It's so casual compared to everything else that he was just saying in the despair that he seemed to have, right? That's also like a very like, oh my god kind of moment. So that hopefully illustrates the power of contrast. I feel like I've really just shown more than explained more. But once you understand this idea exists in videography, audiography, emotion, even like motivation, everything, when you have something that clearly does not fit with the continuum of something, then that's something that people will pay attention to. You can probably see why this has been my favorite video to record for this entire storytelling course, and why I was most excited to record it. So now that this has been unveiled to the world, I think it's something that is very, very powerful to understand. Once you include more contrast in your videos, you can really make videos more meaningful, more entertaining. All right. On to the next video. This video is pretty cool because I'm going to give you this insane tool to actually keep retention during sponsorships, which is something that has classically been notoriously difficult for people to do, but we managed to do it. In fact, I was working with Nick AR, who's a brilliant friend of mine who works on Platinum Trophy videos. One of the questions was he got a sponsorship and we're trying to figure out how do we reduce the loss of retention on the sponsorship, and we managed to figure out a way where when he made a community post after the video, people were like, I absolutely loved the ad and laughed so much. And then they even said it was the funniest thing in the video. So how do we make a sponsorship ad that people actually liked? And I'm going to reveal to you right now what we did and exactly how we implemented it. Here, he's playing The Witcher 3. And what I said to Nick at the start was, I think you should start off with some plot that's going on. People will wait until the end of the plot, at least, to finish the segment itself, right? So this is what he opted for.
Mission, one of the many that I would have to complete to actually get to level 35. And here I'm in a pretty intense boss fight. So
he's at an intense boss fight, and then we've integrated the ad, which, Hayden Healy Smith might call the Pope in the Pool method. The Pope in the Pool idea comes from some scene in some movie where Pope was just swimming around. Anyway, so they're trying to explain some boring dialogue, and basically they're having this meeting, and then to keep the audience interested, there's a Pope just randomly swimming around in a pool. The audience is interested in the Pope in the pool, whilst also getting fed this dialogue and exposition that the movie had to get across, right? So the idea kind of here is, well, we still have to feed the audience information about the thing that's being advertised, but is there a way that we can make it so it doesn't feel separate from the video? Because whenever, I'm going to draw this quickly on my Cintiq, whenever you have an ad that feels separate for the video, always what happens is you'll get this massive dip that goes like that and then ends as soon as the video starts again. But sometimes you may not recover as much as you lost in that dip, right? Because people just leave. Figure out a way to integrate it. Maybe you can joke around and be like, well, because Manscaped, right? This is a facial hair company. So maybe if there's something you can do to integrate the characters with the facial hair or something, then that would be good. And so this is what he did.
To beat this boss and get the trophy, I do want to tell you guys about the sponsor of this video, Manscaped. This dude has got the craziest magic attacks ever. I'm over here trying to roll and stuff. Manscaped makes great men's grooming and hygiene products. They actually sent me some of their products to test out. This product right here is the Lawnmower Trimmer 4.0. It's waterproof, cordless, and you can use it anywhere on your body. See, dudes like this in The Witcher could definitely use this trimmer because this man is disgusting.
So you can see how you've turned this otherwise boring ad and extended out the time for the advertising, because often the sponsors will be oh, we kind of want a 60-second segment, right? Then you could be oh yeah, here's something that actually entertains the audience, as opposed to just telling them something dry and they have to go buy it or whatever.
We're a third done with this help.
But you're also zooming back into the original plot, so be oh, I haven't left the audience behind. The plot is still going, and this is not just a complete ad.
I need to get past this quest to get to level 35. This is very important that we beat this. Now with this trimmer, the blades are designed to specifically avoid cuts.
So you go back and forth
Obviously, you don't
between
want to get your stuff cut up. And what's really nice about it is you can bring it anywhere you go because it comes with a wireless charging dock and a travel lock feature. Oh my gosh, how am I taking damage?
Going back to plot.
Protective shield. Roll at him. He ran away. Now Manscaped also makes hygiene products as well. They have stuff designed to protect against body odor, and you know where. They sent me these two right here, and they're actually good. Here in The Witcher 3, Geralt has a tendency to get freaky, so I know he can definitely use something like this. This is honestly harder than the main game bosses.
So another way to integrate that ad with the game.
Okay, We hit him a few times. Oh, he pushed me back. They also have something called the Weed Whacker, which you can use for your ear and nose. You also won't have to worry about getting cut with this, plus it's waterproof. It appears this man right here in the game has been using the Weed Whacker because his nose is clean. Now, everything I said comes together in one kit, along with a free travel bag and anti-chafing boxers. And these boxers are actually really good. I look forward to wearing these. Now, if this interests you, you can go to the link in the description and you'll get 20% off plus free shipping. Okay, let's finish off this boss. No,
and then you got the end of the arc.
Back up. I don't want to have to redo this. Watch out for that tornado. That stuff does massive damage. He's so weak. Yes, we're hitting him. Yes, we're close to being done. Yes. Oh, look at that finisher. Now that was over with.
All right, so that's how we managed to make an ad that people actually liked. They said they've got comments like, the way you tell us about the sponsor was genius. Love the ad with the 3 character examples. People actually remembered the ad, which is amazing, right? Actually, the inspiration for this particular structure, though, came from Mr. Beast's hydraulic press video, as many of the ideas in this version 2 of the storytelling course do, because he sort of did something similar, like this integration idea. You know, he managed to save attention whilst also making people feel like they weren't roped into watching some ad for like a whole minute, because the original version was not very great, and I'm very proud of Nick for implementing it the way he did. So this is the hydraulic press versus Lamborghini one, and I'm gonna be quiet for a moment just so you can see how they do it and how it plays out.
Grease, the trend one. Neighbor 2 just came out, and to celebrate, I built a scale replica of their house in real life. And we're gonna see what happens if it gets hit by a meteor. And I made realistic looking mannequins of each of the boys because
So anticipation set up, but also the integration.
You can put your mannequins anywhere in the house you want. Try to survive the meteor crash. Come on in. Hello, neighbor. That's not real. It's so hard to get this body in my trunk. I think you'll be safe now. Are you hiding them on the couch?
The pillow's gonna cushion the fall from the meteor. It has to work.
You're telling me if a meteor is hurling at your house, you're gonna hide up there? It's gonna miss this section. I'll be driving. Let's see how many of the boys survive. Drop the meteor!
So we're getting well into the segment.
That was only 1 of 3 meteors. Somehow Carl didn't fall. This is what it looks like if a meteor hits your house. Let's drop the next one. And while we're waiting for them to raise the next meteor...
So something's about to happen, but here's an ad while this thing is about to happen. Very pep in the pool.
Secrets. That sounds scary.
In this video game, you investigate a series of missing person cases in the open world of Ravenbrook. But trust no one, boys. Everyone in the game is a suspect.
Trust no one.
Not even no land. Now we have meteor number 2, but this time, the meteor's on fire. Drop the meteor!
Amping up the stakes.
My car! Hello Neighbor 2 is available right now on PC, Xbox, Switch, and PlayStation consoles. Oh my god! You're definitely deceived. The meteor's still smoking. Wait a minute! I'm okay! Somehow Chris survived. I am smart. We survived, buddy. Chandler, on the other hand, didn't make it. Raise the last meteor! Chandler, you're now me. I'm rich. Drop the meteor when you want.
Drop the meteor!
Oh, okay.
Oh my god, it's on top.
Oh my goodness! Goodbye, Carl.
Let's see if I survived. Yes!
Click the link in the description to go to Hello Neighbor 2's official website.
And then you actually have to have a CTA.
Nowhere to hide if a meteor's coming at your house. You're welcome.
It's also always good to be very clear of your call to action, obviously, because you want people to actually go and buy the product because that's good for the sponsors. That's how you do prep in the pool. That's how you do sponsorship integrations without losing retention. It won't always work. Sometimes it's very difficult to do this, but trust me, if you're just a little bit creative, there's more scenarios that you can do this than you might think. This is a fun lesson, so please implement that. And when you get better attention and earn money as a result of better attention too, then you can feel free to say hi to me and leave a review for the course or something. In this video, I'm going to be showing you the use of Notion as a storyboarding tool that you can use for your YouTube videos. And this is just a way that I personally plan out my videos if I'm going really intense on hyper optimization. I just want to show you it because I think it's very unique. I don't think anyone else I know does it exactly like this, but this is a template that you can use to make stories and make good structures for stories and understand where each part of a story is going, whilst also remembering to record different parts of stories and also having a script. So here I've got a template, and this template comes up every time like I've used this particular template, video template v6. In this template, I've actually got this harmless storytelling structure, which is that you start with a character in comfort or familiarity, which is the setup of the character. Then there's a need. They enter an unfamiliar situation. They adapt to that situation. then they find like a deeper meaning, they get the climax, and then they get the payoff, and then they're a changed person as a result of the video. So that's the Harmon story circle in a nutshell. What I've done is I've basically put the circle into the Notion template. This giant thing is literally just a gigantic Notion table. You can use Excel for this, you can use Google Sheets for this, anything will work. But you can see that each cell contains parts of the storytelling circle. Here, I put emotional aims, and I have creators that I think about when I use those emotional aims. I'm going to, for example, put like Bocce the Rock here, not exactly a creator, but something I get inspired from. I'll put like videography here and be like, here is like a shot of a coffee followed by a shot of a nuclear explosion or something. I know this is not a real video, obviously. I'm gonna put sound design here, so music choices or sound effects potentially, and then the script can go in here. And then this is like just, you may think that having a coffee is productive in the morning, but is it destructive for your body? If I've recorded A-roll for it, I'll usually just tick on this. But if I need to record like extra B-roll, because usually I'll record an A-roll take to start off with. So once I've recorded it, I'll just like tick it. But if I need B-roll, like if I want to record some extra stuff, and then that way when I get to the eventual shot list, I can be like, hey, like I just want to figure out what shots do I actually need for this particular thing. And then I'll be like, filter by B need is checked. And then it'd be like, okay, like these are the shots that I need for this particular video, and it just filters it down like that. So if I've recorded it, then I'll put on B record, so I don't need to worry about it anymore. So then I will put B rec is unchecked as the next criteria. So when B need is checked, but B rec is unchecked, so then when I click it, it disappears. But I'll just get rid of that for now, because I'll show you more of the actual template itself. I want to create like a genuine sense of anticipation or hypertension in the needs section in the storyboarding. So, you know, that might be like, here are my stakes, or here's the reason I'm doing this. Ideally, I don't have to state it. Ideally, it should be implicit in what I'm trying to show people. For example, maybe I'm having a fight with someone and I'm about to box them in the next 30 days. And it's like, oh shit, like there's a fight that's going to go on, right? That would be interesting as like a stake, because it's like, oh, this, like he's going to be in danger if he doesn't learn how to box properly. Ideally, like there's U-bit with some save the cat like ability, some foreshadowing, and just getting started with things. I have to actually update this, but this is the idea of like separating like the video into like different arcs as well, because like I feel like you have to have arcs with micro progressions, as I mentioned before in the whole progressive novelty section, right? And this is also bring back together the idea of payoffs inside of a video. What are the hooks? What are the events? What are the payoffs? Or what are the key show tenketsu things that are happening inside of a video? I just realized I'm using a lot of phrases that are very specific to me, so hopefully I've covered it by the time you get to this video. If not, please watch the relevant sections on anime storytelling / Kisho tenketsu, on mastering payoffs, and on common retention dips, I think was the other video. These are all like prerequisites to understanding this video, I guess. Maybe storytelling structures as well. I'll have like a game. These are like individual arcs. Of course, like each scene represents a different shot ideally, or even a set of shots potentially, because then I can know whether I've recorded it or not, or need to record it. I will include like a call to action somewhere probably in the middle of the video. Some people do include it at the end, totally fine. But the problem with including at the end is that you kind of want people to ideally go to the end card, and then they can click on the end card and go to the next video, right? So if you have the CTA at the end, you're gonna have a massive, like even more massive than usual drop off at the end of the video with your CTA, and the fact that it's the end of the video. The number of people left to actually click to the next video is like very low. So I would put CTA somewhere in the middle, ideally part of the content, which is Pope in the Pool, and then thinking about the climax of a video. Now, I think that the climax of a video is always the most important part, because it's kind of like, why does your video exist in the first place? And ideally, it would be like the thing that has the most tension and has the biggest payoff, and then you come out of it like kind of a changed person, and that's cool. That's where you can like insert a bit of meaning, and that's when people will be like, oh my god, like this is like the greatest storytelling ever. The last thing is that it's important to include a specific CTA to another video, because from different studies that other YouTubers have done, shout out to Brady from Mind Squire, who's like, they do like pranks and they're really funny. They did this really interesting study where they tested out specific CTAs, like click on the next video, and you get like 10% bonus for doing that. It is really, really smart to, at the end of the video, be like, if you thought that this was great, but who is the GOAT of, you know, some other question that gets led, and that gets led into the next video? That's like the best kind of CTA, because it's like a pre-hook to the next video, and your CTA views will increase drastically, and then your session time will increase drastically, and you get more views on the next video. That's just an explanation, a little bit of storyboarding and scripting. To be honest, the only downside of this is that there are some shots where I actually want to storyboard and draw and like put in the image for it. So I'm not sure how I solve that. I mean, you can technically add images in Notion to do that, but just scrolling through it seems a bit annoying. So I might end up doing something in Keynote where it's just like, instead of a storyboard, I might just chuck it here and do it as a literal presentation of like pictures, and then I can figure out things correctly. Yeah, that's storyboarding from Notion in a nutshell.